All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. I say this sometimes, and it's very relevant for today's episode, that you get what you pay for, or you get what you pay for, and this podcast is free. So lower your expectations. People, I made a couple of mistakes in this, and look, this is not the guest's fault. Kallee from Viper Irrigation is a fantastic person, great guest, but I made some errors when recording this, which means you don't have all your fancy camera angles. I do have a new lighting setup. I hope you like how it looks for those who are watching on YouTube. But my fancy camera angles are gone. There's going to be some grainy internet-affected footage. Sometimes our voices might lag a little bit. There might be a few things like that. Look, you can deal with it. I know you can handle it. I believe in you. Also, there are some people who are interested in this, but I put up saying, would people be interested if I did a lawn care package and sold it on Patreon? Going into detail onto exactly what I do. Some of you were interested. And for some of you that are interested, that package is now available on Patreon at $73.50 because of US exchange rates. I tried to make it 70. Don't ask. Maybe it's my incompetence, but that's what it is. And what it comes with is a full season package that describes but shows every single service that we recommend on this package, exact products we're using, and exact application rates for square meters adjustable through the magic of spreadsheets. If you put in square meter rates, it'll change, blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. That is available with the 1 hour long description in the Patreon. There is a link in the description. And so thank you for supporting. Also, we've got a new podcast series coming out soon. We're going to talk about that in this podcast. Get excited for it. It's called, I don't know if I've fully branded it yet, but I'm thinking calling it Makers Month, where we get brands, and we've got a lot of fantastic brands who have said, yes, we've already started recording these episodes. They're being edited. It's a hell of a lot of work. But those episodes are almost ready to go. We're going to release a lot of different episodes with manufacturers of lawnmowers, whippersnippers, all kinds of stuff, spray equipment, blah, 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 and just smash them out one after the other. This is a long, rambly intro, but get excited for that. And before we ramble on anymore, let's actually get into the podcast. All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. Look, we've got Kallee from Viper Irrigation. Look, this is one of the funniest things I've ever done because I've been trying to deal with big businesses for the last month. You people might know that we're doing a podcast series. We're going to interview a lot of different businesses, and they are so hard to deal with. It's so hard to get these big businesses on the podcast. I sent a message out to a friend of mine, Joel Barnett, friend of the podcast, runs a landscaping podcast. And I said, I want an irrigation expert. You're a landscape expert. Do you know someone? He said, I heard this guy on a podcast named Kallee from Viper Irrigation. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Tell me more about him. And he's like, yeah, it was a great podcast, blah, blah, blah. You should ask him on. I was like, yeah, cool. So this morning I asked him on the podcast. He's like, yeah, do you want to do it tonight? And I was like, mate, it's going to be late. And it's like 10 o'clock tonight. How do you go? He's here. He's keen. I've never had anybody be that keen to come on so late at night. So either you're a top bloke or you're a closeted meth addict. So how's that for an intro, Kallee?
I am in a factory in Baronia, and if you are from Victoria, you'll laugh at that. So I could be a meth addict. It's still unconfirmed.
No, you look too healthy to be a meth addict. And you're running a business, so look, to be honest though, I mean, not that I want to accuse you of anything. You've got 4 kids under 4. You've been running a business with employees. You've got 10 years under your belt. You work out in the sun. How do you handle all that stuff? And welcome to the podcast, by the way.
Thank you. It's great to be here at 10:37 to start a podcast. It's a good one. But we just do. I mean, I'm not going to lie. There's been a bit of marriage counselling along the way, and a bit of fun. But we just manage, and it's just we always have that understanding. Me and my wife, obviously, I'm referring to, but it's always been the business and the kids come first. The business is sort of our 5th child. But as much as I like to think it's my excavator, but she tells me my excavator isn't our children, but she'll manage with the business. So I mean, business is what buys her all nice things. So I mean, she can deal with that. So, but anyway, we just manage and we just do it, and our kids come along for the ride. I mean, coming into summer, I do work Saturdays a fair bit. I do try, obviously with 4 kids, I try not to obviously work as much on the weekends. But Saturdays now, obviously coming into the summer, we do work a bit, but my 2 elder boys, which one's 4 and one's 3, they take turns in coming to work with dad on a Saturday. So, which is great. Like, I love that. I went to work with my dad when I was that young as well, and have very fond memories of it. So creating that relationship with them, and obviously hoping that, the business lasts long enough that I can hand it down to them and then just go and sit in Lake Eildon on my houseboat and they can pay me royalties for the rest of my life would be great.
I like that plan. So we're gonna have a bit of a lighthearted conversation. I feel like it's too late at night to be too serious. One of us will fall asleep. I mean, it's only 7:30 here because we're in the other side of the country. You may as well be in a different world from each other. But I think it's lighthearted. Have a bit of fun, have a bit of a chuckle. But we'll also talk about something that's actually pretty serious, because you're an irrigation expert, right? You've been doing this. You said you've been running a business for 10 years, or you've been qualified landscaper for 10 years. And
I've been in the industry 10 years. I've been in the industry 10 years and had the business for 4.5. It'll be 5 years in Feb.
And you've specialized into irrigation, and you've become a bit of a go-to name, being on the block, right? I mean, if Joel Barnett's recommending you, being on the block, I don't know, if he's just, I don't know, man. Like, you've never even met him, have you? You never even talked to him. But he knows a good.
But he runs a podcast as well.
He does a successful business, and you're helping Lawns in good nick out with his irrigation. So I thought, look, let's get you on, because the number one thing I wanted to talk about, aside from having fun and making jokes about the suburb you're in and how you handle all these children, the thing that we want to talk about is, just to educate people, give them a nice view into the common pitfalls people make with irrigation systems, the kind of things that you do to get the best results for clients, the way you think about things. Because coming from WA, we talked about this off air, but WA, there's a lot of irrigation. We call it reticulation. I don't know why. Some people call it irrigation, reticulation, whatever. But there's a lot of these sprinkler systems around because of how dry we are. And even though I've been dealing with them for years and years and years, it's a rabbit trail that I don't feel like I've mastered. And I feel that a lot of people over east, where they get plenty of rain, they're having this dry season, they would love to help their clients out. They'd love to help their property out. They're pretty clueless. And so have a guy from the east who loves doing this stuff and has been doing it for years. I reckon it's pretty good. How's that for an intro? That was a little bit more serious now, wasn't it? That was a better intro, I feel.
Yeah, we'll take that. But no, I definitely think that irrigation is a forgotten trade over here. I mean, I do have a connection over in WA, swell irrigation and reticulation. We've spoken quite a few times about the differences between Victoria, the East Coast versus the West Coast, and I found it crazy how everyone over there has irrigation, whereas over here it's a luxury item. We're not dealing with everyone. We're dealing with higher end people, and coming into the last couple of years, obviously especially with people like Lawns and Goodnick and those sort of guys, those lawn fanatics, like with the Facebook page and all that sort of stuff, that sort of hobby of lawn care and looking after your lawn and all that sort of stuff, that's really sort of helped promote irrigation over this side. Obviously, as I said, Nick and all those guys that promote it over here is only beneficial to us. But I mean, it's a great trade to be in. It's very, as we said off air, it's a very niche trade. We definitely are able to work in a realm where there isn't that much competition. You talk to landscapers, we do a lot of work for landscapers, and there's 4, 5, 6 guys quoting a job at a time, and it's like we have to we have to sort of refer other people, other irrigation guys to these jobs. So then when they're trying to compare quotes, at least they're comparing apples to apples, you know. And I think that's a really sort of healthy thing because, you know, over here, I mean, I've said it to a few people, and I don't know if this is right now. It's on a public forum, but this is what I say. There's only about 6 or 7 guys that do what I do in Victoria.
Really?
You know,
Wow.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but like I've tried to do a count, and domestic irrigation as a whole, like just domestic irrigation or residential irrigation, there is a small number. There is other companies that do both, but as just domestic irrigation, there's 6 or 7, and you know, there's that do quality work. Like there's obviously landscapers and all that sort of stuff, and there is landscapers that know how to irrigate. There is landscapers that know how to irrigate and all that sort of stuff, which is sometimes questionable, and I do sometimes
have a chuckle,
hang it a little bit on, have a chuckle and hang it on landscapers a little bit. But it's definitely something over here that we really try and focus on. And obviously, like if I've been on a few podcasts now, I mean, it's in the public forum, and as I said to you off air, like I was a professional wrestler, like outside of my apprenticeship when I was landscaping, and then into it. And so working in that field, or, you know, as a hobby, really, I learned how to brand, and I learned how to do stuff like this, and, you know, and be able to network with people in a way of creating that bond, so then people remember you. Whereas a lot of people in the industry, they don't know how to do that. They're tradies. They're really good at what they do, but they can't do this. Really, they can't do this. So being able to do this, and being able to bring attention to a trade that realistically it needs attention. Like, you know, I can't do this. I mean, I have 4 kids. I'm trying to build it, trying my hardest, and, you know, but
your kids kind of need at least some attention. You know what I mean? Like, especially with 4.
But just trying to build the industry. And, you know, like we have done. Like a good friend of mine was on the phone the other day, and he goes, you know what? As much as I hate to say this, and he's in the industry as well, he's more commercial than anything else, but he's in the industry as well. He goes, you know what? As much as I hate to say this, and I know your head will explode when I say this, but he goes, your business model and the way that you run your domestic irrigation company is better than I've ever seen anyone do in that field. He goes, don't get a big head about it, but people need to have a look at this business model and see how to grow that as a niche, because that's what this industry needs. Like, we need to be able to grow it, so then it brings more attention. But I'm the biggest believer in a rising tide rises all ships. So I might not be able to win all the work. I might not be able to do it. I mean, at the moment, we went from 5 guys to 2 guys at the moment, but, you know, we might not be able to do all the work. But let's bring attention to the industry. Let's actually show people that there is sprinklers. You don't just go to Bunnings and spend $50. Let's get a real guy in. Like, you know, if you want a new bathroom in your house and part of the renovation, you get a plumber in, you know, you get a builder in, you get all these people in. It's like, that's my biggest thing. It's like, if you want landscaping done, you get your landscaper in, but then you also get your irrigation guy in. And bringing the attention to it like that is something that I've focused on, and I'm trying to, you know, through networking and communications with people, and obviously doing stuff like this, is really important to me to be able to grow the industry, because, as I said, a rising tide rises all ships. And I don't want to, as much as, you know, having money is great, like, it's more about creating that legacy and not legacy, very cliche, but creating that, you know, realm where people can do this. You know, it's the same as anything.
So do you feel like well, I was just saying, do you feel like with the industry then that it sounds like you're saying there's this sort of forgotten about angle on it with the reticulation irrigation side of things. Do you feel that's partly because it's the contractor's fault? Because I wonder if there's a lot of people out there. I feel about like with say your normal lawn like garden contractors out there, not even landscaping ones, just maintenance, whoever is in that bracket. I think one of the best things to do in business is verbal upsells. Like you have a great opportunity to really help your own business. If you're like, one of the things that we've based our business on is doing services that are a little bit more technical, but then because they're technical, you can charge a higher hourly rate. And I've been thinking about this a lot over the summer period that's coming up, because I'm on a Facebook group that called Lawnmower Contractors Australia, and you get a lot of people on there who talk about, you know, how stressed they are about, especially like the further north, Brisbane area. I've seen a lot, Sunshine Coast, things like that, Gold Coast. People are like, they're stressing because their business is based on, say, mowing or hedging or, you know, whatever it is. And all those things stop growing when the rain stops coming. And I kind of feel like, why don't you see this as a fantastic opportunity to start promoting, well, why can't we do some irrigation? So, because I'm hearing you saying, oh, it's not in front of the client's mind, but maybe it's not in front of the client's mind because there's only 6 irrigation specialists in Melbourne, apparently, you know, or, you know, kind of doing your thing. If you got more people, it seems like there's a fantastic well there to tap for people who are listening to this, who go, I want to upskill a little bit and try and pursue an avenue that is a little bit higher hourly rate or a lot higher hourly rate, depending on what you're charging.
And well, this is the thing. Like we charge. It's on the public forum, and I tell everyone, you know, during quotes anyway. But we charge $1,350 per zone. So, like, if you're listening to this and you know what a zone is, or if you've got one, if you do have a property and you split it into zones, like $1,350. So, you know, we had a guy not long ago. We did 3 zones in his house. We were done like in the car driving away at 11:30, and we started at 8 o'clock. We did 3 zones, and we charged 2 guys, and we charged $1,350, and that was including an extra trip to the supplier because we'd run out. We needed something as well. So like stuff like that. Like obviously that doesn't happen every day, but it's you know like we get stuck on 5 zone jobs for 5-6 days. Like it's that happens as well. But it's definitely about it's about realizing that there is money there. Like, but at the same time, it is about also knowing that you don't go to Bunnings and you don't make an irrigation system off the back of Bunnings. Like, I know that's not bad mouthing Bunnings. Bunnings is great.
No, but I totally understand it because basically what it is with every part of this industry, every part of gardening is you have an opportunity to solve a problem, and the more difficult the problem is to solve, the more someone is willing to pay. And I find a lot of people they've run a sprinkler system off a tap before. You know, they've got their impact sprinkler or something in the middle of their lawn, and the technical knowledge, although it's very attainable, there's so many little things you need to know. Like I was having a chat with the guy, right? But before we head down, there's so many things to know, and there's so many parts you need. Like it's ridiculous. Like I personally have 3 full those plastic briefcases in my ute, right? And that is not enough parts to do light servicing. Like because
I've got 2 toolbox. I got 2 full toolboxes and like big open like wing ones, and then like I find that sometimes even like we don't do servicing from like the start of spring to the end of summer, any maintenance really, unless it's like an existing client. But other than that, we don't touch it. But like even then, like we still struggle to have parts and always finding ourselves going to the supplier or getting the supplier to bring it out to us. Or actually, my dad brought us some parts today, which was quite nice and different.
Nice. It's like Uber Eats for reticulation.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at here is I remember early days in my business when I was definitely not charging enough and didn't really know what I was doing. I did a job for a guy who, and I remember this clear as day because he never paid me for it as well, right? Like this is a bad day. He had a dog, and the dog was dicking up his retic, right? And just classic 19 mil poly pipe in the garden beds.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh yeah, I'll fix this. And I can't remember what I charged him. It was nothing. It might have been 3 holes, and I might have been like, oh, I'll charge us $60, whatever. I was making up the number, but it was nothing, right? And I start plugging all these things, keep turning the sprinkler system back on, and more holes, because you never know what you're facing until you actually get into it. You know what I mean? Like if you have a break in the pipe, all the water goes out there, you fix it. Well, there might be a break further down. So I spent way too long there fixing all these things. And I ran out of parts because I only thought I needed 3. And so I keep plugging. So I've got to go drive back to Bunnings, which luckily was about 4 minutes away at that specific house. But I've had this plenty of times where, you run over a sprinkler and it's just a simple 15-cent, nipple or riser that you've snapped. Got to go out to the shop and get it. And what I'm getting at is you can have a lot of cheap guys out there who don't know what they're doing and who are not stocked. And so they're charging, let's say, $50 an hour. And it takes them 3 hours to fix because they can't solve the problem quickly. They don't know how to identify it. They don't really know what's going on. Right? You could come in at, let's just use nice round numbers, at $200 an hour, and you're there for 30 minutes. So they're there for 3 hours, they're $150. You're there for 30 minutes. You solve the problem. The client does not care in that scenario. The smart client doesn't care about the price the hourly rate, because the overall price is better. And it's a lot of time to work this stuff out. It's a lot of thinking to work this stuff out. But when you've worked it out, it's so valuable because so few people, apparently only 6 in the Melbourne area, for domestic stuff. But you get what I mean. Like how many lawnies?
So many.
Yeah, exactly.
So
50 people are going to contact you now. I do it, you idiot. But you hear what I'm saying, right? There's a great opportunity there for people on the East Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there needs to be more guys, in that industry. I mean, at the same time, if you don't know what you're doing, please don't. please don't join the club. A rising tide rises all ships that know what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, that's that. I mean, yeah, that is the moral of the story. Like, we do need guys coming in and doing it. And I mean, trying to employ someone, like you talk to, I got a lot of connections like with plumbers and sparkies and all that sort of stuff. I've got a few brothers, that sort of stuff that are in those trades, and talking to even them, they're talking about how hard it is to find people and all that sort of stuff. And I turn to them and go, mate, every second person's a sparky, every second bloke's a plumber, every second bloke's a chippy. Like, try and find someone that does irrigation. I'm blessed, and I hope he doesn't listen to this because his head's big enough already, because I tell him all the time. But my first year, who's the only guy that's with me at this given moment, he's a godsend. Like, I don't know where I'd be after the last few months without him. Like, he came in January. I'll leave the apprenticeship school name out of it, but they've been awful. Like, he hasn't started his theory work until he's doing 2 sessions later this year, and then he doesn't start until next year. He's been on $15 an hour for all this year, just sucking it up. But he loves it. Like, he loves what he does. He's really enjoying working with me. He's really enjoying irrigation. And it's like, this is gold. Like, this is gold for the industry. Like, and as I said to him, as we're saying, there's 6 people. There's probably going to end up being 600.
I get what you mean. Yeah, it's not every man and his dog who's got a retic business. They're actually hard to find. So that's what you really mean.
But yeah, and then 10 years time, and he's 18 now. 10 years time, he's 26, and he's killing it. Like, and that's what this industry needs, is we need these young guys to come in. I feel like everyone says this, but like, nobody leaves. I don't know if you've ever met anyone, but I haven't met anyone apart from Brody, my apprentice, who left school wanting to be an irrigation specialist. Like, it doesn't exist. I didn't. I wanted to be a personal trainer.
Did you? and wrestle people.
In the undies.
How have you undies? They pay enough too,
send you a photo. You can make it the thumbnail.
But I don't want to get demonetized. Sorry. No, but no, I love it. So let's get into some practical stuff then, because you say people don't get into it if you don't know what you're doing, and I bet you 99% of people don't know what they're doing. I would say a great place to start for those people who don't know anything, although it's not perfectly relevant for all people, but Ben Sims from Lawn Tips. I don't know if you ever watched Lawn Tips, Kallee. So
Yes,
he's done the golf green in his house. I was lucky enough to help him on one of those videos doing the irrigation installation. That was my
I
claim
watched
to
the
fame.
irrigation installation.
I was the
I
idiot
watched
that just stand around and looked pretty. You know, you just remember.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
one of the videos in there, I did actually get the opportunity to help him, and yeah, it was a great little series. The problem with it is it's kind of, because it's not running off a house, it's running off a bore, and it's running off a pump from a what you call it, a water tank, and they're solenoid in-head sprinklers that are very expensive, and it's one at a time, and you know, it's the fundamentals are there, but the actual specifics on how that would translate to a house lawn are still a little bit confusing. Like, for example,
And
yeah,
I'm just going to add it, just to add some controversy into this. There is a
right.
section in that irrigation system where the pipe sizing is wrong. And I'm going to leave it at that part. I'm going to leave it at that part. And I want to see if people can go back, get him a couple more views, or he can tell me. But there is a section in that system where the pipe sizing is wrong.
Right. Do you know what?
I watched
We might not have put this on camera, but we went to a specific shop, and the shop recommended a certain float valve, and the float valve reduced a lot, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we talked about this very briefly, actually. It reduced a lot, and then there's a little screen filter, like a little very fine wire mesh, for those people who don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was Ben just bought the parts from the design, and we put it in there, and because when you put pipe together, one thing is, you've never done this before, it's almost impossible to not get sand in your pipe, no matter how clean you are. Like, you got to flush out at the end, and the tiny little screen for the big pipe clogged up, and we couldn't work it out. And we had pressurized, and the pump was maybe 500 meters away, 300 meters away.
Yeah.
Had to jump in the gator, drive down, turn it off manually down the bottom, and anyways, it was
it was
blow anything.
It was quite funny. My wife actually said that. She goes, because we were watching it. We actually, I don't know why, but we were sitting there as a family watching him put together this irrigation system. And I said, that's wrong. He's done that wrong. And my wife goes, are you going to sit there and nitpick everything? I was like, no, like, he knows what he's talking about, but this part was wrong. She goes, does it bother you? And I was like, it does bother me.
That was probably the video I was in. You were criticizing while I was in there. So,
well, if you want me to come and fix it, I'll do it for free, and as long as you pay for flights and accommodation for 4 kids and my wife and me. And put me.
Why am I paying? Why am I paying?
You can pay. You can pay.
Okay, I'll send Ben a message.
I'm
gonna find it whilst we're talking. So, is that the part you're talking about? Is that the specific part, or is it something else as well?
It was part of the float valve, because what happens is it would have created a heap of water hammer in that pipe line.
Water hammer, what's that? That sounds like a Pokemon attack. You know what I mean? Bulbasaur does. I don't know anything about Pokemon. I think all the fans.
No, it's a combination of air and water, and when obviously the water is trying to come through, and there's air as well, it hammers. You'll have it, like, people have it in their kitchen, like, yeah.
Do you mean like that? Yeah, I know what you mean. That sound.
Yeah. Can you confirm it one more time? I just need to hear that. Yeah. No, that's the one. Yeah.
That's what people come to this podcast for. Just stupid things like this. All right, I'm going to chuck this YouTube video on the screen. Sorry, Ben, I got to turn your volume. Can you hear Ben when I put that on? We're becoming very professional. You couldn't hear him at all.
There we go.
Good. So this might have been the one.
I think
yeah.
it does actually.
Anyways,
say it. There. I think it's you're standing at the tank when you see it.
Everybody who's talking, I'm not in the video yet. I'm not even there on the day he's filming this. Might have been there. I think it's called installing. How I'm installing irrigation on my backyard golf green. And if you want to see my beautiful face, I'm about halfway in. Believe it or not, there I am. There's me. I'm wearing the same bloody shirt.
It's the same one.
It's my work shirt. And we had a good laugh about it. But yeah, we did have problems. See, and that's where the experience comes in. That's what I was telling you before. Like, not that Ben doesn't have experience with irrigation systems, but when you're working on a golf course, you don't get many opportunities to install irrigation, you know?
Yeah.
We're just putting
and like
distracted by watching lawn tips.
Like, so for an explanation on this, that to me, I don't know, and I can't remember what he said because it was a while ago that I did watch this, but that pipe is a 32 mil poly pipe. Now you guys are about to put in a, I believe, 50 mil pipe into that pump.
I can't remember. Oh yes, I get what you mean. So over here is where it comes out.
Correct. So if you were to cut,
and this big fat guy here.
Yes, that big fat guy there. So if this is a pipe, right, and you were to cut here and here and turn it into a cup, imagine how much more water that 50 mil would hold than that 32 mil.
So what we're saying, people who are just listening, is that the pipe at the base of the pump that is delivering the water to the pump is smaller than the pipe coming out of the pump. And are you saying they should be the same size? Is that what you're getting at?
So normally it's either the same on a domestic, in like a domestic realm where it's sort of, you know, the quarter acre block or less, where it's, you know,
much smaller.
It doesn't sort of matter as much about liters per minute. Like, I mean, all liters per minute always matters, but obviously something that Ben's doing here, the liters per minute matter a lot more than what it would if you were chucking in 6 MP rotators in a front lawn.
Yeah, because when you've got like a 50 square meter patch you're trying to do in one station, you've got a lot of room for error, right? But his sprinklers are trying to cover massive areas for it to be efficient and not cost him $1 billion. Because if you were trying to irrigate MP rotors over acres, right? Like you think about what you were saying at $1,000, $1,350 per station, he would have to have 40 stations to irrigate that one area, right? It'll be something crazy like that. Not the green, I mean like the entire golf, like part 3. So you just can't afford to do that. And so then what a lot of people will do, for those who are completely unaware, is you will engineer your sprinkler system based on your flow rate and your pressure, which is a really important thing to do. And so essentially you're trying to make the most out of every bit of water you've got, because it saves you putting in more sprinklers, and it actually saves you a hell of a lot of money in the long run, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Whereas on a small thing, it might save you $15 because, you know, that's the difference between, you know, one normal pop-up and not having another one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But and then to explain, like, if that was something that like we would have done, it would have been at least like, say, that outlet 40 mil, 50 mil, and then 40 mil to 50 mil out. I probably would have used the same size, because obviously pipe size, you know, we are getting more liters per minute, obviously, because the pipe can carry more water.
I wonder if, because I believe that a lot of this design wasn't done. I don't believe Ben had too much to do with the design. Like I said before,
No.
and we're obviously both fans of Ben, so we're not having a go at him. Although we could, how about we just have a go at him, make it as controversial as possible, so that we can manipulate the algorithm to get me more views. What do you reckon?
Let's do it.
No.
Yeah.
But I was there, so I'm not gonna. I didn't notice any of this when I was there. And my point is that even Ben, having worked at golf courses before, doing a lot of maintenance, and me being West Australian, and I installed a retic system with my dad at my house when I was probably 12, right? Like it's just there's so much. It's like so much part of like WA gardening culture, and I still
think
don't know
that's so
much stuff.
I think what I find with irrigation in that domestic setting, when you do it, when you DIY it, it's a little bit of Russian roulette because you don't know what you're doing. So you're going in and you're like, I find myself going through Bunnings aisles, and if somebody's got a 15 mil riser, they've got 10 15 mil risers, and then they've got 13 mil poly because it's cheaper than 19 mil poly. I'll go up to them and I'll go up to them and I'll go, look, mate, I run an irrigation company. I don't want you to go and waste all this money on this. If you do want to use those risers, you do need, minimum 19 mil. Best, you're better off using 25 mil. And doing that. So then, who knows? 5 years time, I might be going to service his system, and because I've said that rather than, not said anything at all, might have helped it. But then,
So for those who don't know, the 13 mil pipe, right, can only hold 13 mils of water, right? Yeah, wide. And so when you then put bigger risers coming out of it, it doesn't have enough flow to actually feed all those risers. That's what you're trying to say, right? So you're better from going from big to small other than small to big. So let's dumb this down a little bit, Kallee. What size? Ignore Ben, right? Because Ben's very unique in the fact that he's making a golf green in his house. Let's say
he was following a design. He was following a design at the end of the day. We're not sitting here. I'm not sitting here criticizing Ben's work. I'm sure it all doesn't leak and all that sort of stuff, and that was the most important part. But I think that's where it comes down to is that design. If that design's wrong, then the whole thing's wrong.
And to be fair, that's about 3. For those who are listening, we're talking about 2 or 3 meters worth of pipe that could quite easily be changed out. So if he does listen to this, Benjamin, he can just replace it if he needed to, I guess. But okay, what we're going to say is we're back. Let's say we're in a residential block, right? And we say we've got somebody up in Queensland who's wanting to do an installation, let's say at their own property, and they want to get some experience under their belt before they go start charging people for this. Would you recommend, or what size of pipe would you recommend, and what type of pipe would you recommend?
So we run both. I'm actually looking at coil of poly right now. We run both. We do run poly. We run poly at that $13.50 price point. We run poly, and then obviously the price of PVC is exuberant at the moment. Or not at the moment. It's never going to go back down. But it's so we have to surcharge that. It's not that bad. I think it's $100 extra a zone, just to compensate for the difference in pricing. But most people are happy with poly. And then we probably get 10-15% of people that want the PVC, which is fine. We'll run either. To me, when it comes to poly, the most important part is steel clips rather than plastic ratchet clips. I once had this. I once was a huge advocate for plastic clips when I first started the business. And then I said to a bloke, the first day that a plastic clip fails on me will be the day that I'll transition over to steel clips and pay the 30 cents extra a clip.
Yep.
And then they failed on me. There was a bad batch from a manufacturer. Because they press these plastic clips in molds, and the one clip in the mold of 100 was out. So I had to go back to, I think it ended up being about 7 or 8 jobs where a clip had popped off,
Oh no.
and there was water going everywhere. So that was all pretty much from this time last year all the way up until Christmas. So it was really bad timing as well. But
So are you
yeah,
talking
that's
about
what we're talking
these
about
type
here.
of clips?
Yeah, the
These
second one
ones
in
here?
these Norma Cobra clamps is what we use. I know there is a few other. They're all named after animals for some reason. I don't know who would name their business after animals, but
No.
especially
Viper would be
especially
terrible, wouldn't it?
snakes. Yeah,
Snakes,
especially
no.
snakes.
Yeah.
But
Better than naming your business after a racetrack in England. I mean, that would be pretty bad too. So
yeah,
what if we had a Dodge Viper
yeah,
at Silverstone racetrack? Anyways, now people know what my
there you
business is
go.
about. But if we go back to this, talking about this, so polypipe, I found that polypipe gets poo-pooed a lot because it's considered kind of, what's the
Does
word?
cheap.
Nasty. But I also know,
Yeah,
having felt different brands, that there is difference between like brands,
yeah,
and there are
yeah. So
different thicknesses and qualities.
we run Vinadex polypipe, which is, if people are savvy with the brands, and it actually has a rough surface, and it's actually quite it's thicker and more durable than like the standard. I don't even know what brand the other ones are. They may even be Vinadex as well, but there's a certain particular polypipe that Vinadex makes that's quite rigid and quite good. Like, there's been times where, like, temporarily overnight or something, you can I've left it under pressure at my own house, not at a client's house, at my own house, and I've left it under pressure, and it's been fine. And there's been no complications with it. Like, I do not condone using it as a main line or anything like that, and don't do what I did either. It was more of a test. I did that, but yeah, I mean, using polypipe, I'm not against it, and I do advocate for it when guys are very strictly PVC guys. But I mean, I'm not a commercial installer either. Installing them in parks and get like public
Yes.
gardens and schools or football ovals or ovals in general. Crucial, because you're getting cars driving over it, a lot of foot traffic and all that sort of stuff. Whereas you're putting it in a front garden that people walk in, a couple of times a week. There's not really potentially that much damage. The biggest enemy of polypipe is a shovel, and if you know where all the polypipe is, then you shouldn't be hitting it with a shovel.
Another thing that is really important is the depth of the pipe, especially if you're going to be aerating or driving on the lawn. I once had this job I did. It was a retirement village, and they released this retirement village or opened it in 3 stages, right? So they built a stage, released it, and then built the second stage and built the third stage. And so what happened is the first landscaping company, they, I believe, went as cheap as possible. And a great way to save on labor is to not dig pipes. And a great way to save on parts is to use the smallest size of sprinkler or pop-up, which is a 50 mil, right? And we'll talk about pop-ups in a minute, right? The problem that we had is that the pipe was so close to the surface and the sprinklers were so short. They were screwed in all the way. Do you call them, like, the smallest riser? Do you call them nipples as well, or do you just call it a little riser?
Is there no thread in the middle?
Yeah, is this just the little thread?
So is this for the pop up? Are we talking?
Yeah,
Are we talking for a pop up?
a
Yeah.
pop-up,
So
right?
we don't even run. So we don't even
Yeah.
run that straight up. So if you're talking pipes here, and then you've got the female thread, and you're
Yes,
talking going
exactly.
straight up into a pop up. Yeah. So we
Yes.
don't run that. We run. I don't know if it's the same over there, but we run an Arctic arm.
Yeah, articulated riser.
A
Let's
swing,
talk about that later, because that's also what they didn't do. I might have retic parts right in front of me here. No, I have a golf ball though. Oh man, do you know what? I just moved them. I've got a little box in front of me on this table that I just put stuff in. But no, so they've put. So what you're doing is more expensive.
I do call that a nipple.
Yes. Okay. The tiny little thing.
Yes.
Some people call them nipples, and some people call them like risers. And for some people who are listening to this, they're going, "What the hell is a nipple?" Right? But it's think of the shortest riser you could possibly get, which is literally just thread and then thread. And you can screw your sprinkler right onto the pipe, right onto the female fitting on the pipe. So what they've done is what Kallee's talking about with an articulated riser or a swing arm is the best way to install it, right? But what these people have done, they've put the sprinkler right on the pipe. So what that means is I can't put the sprinkler any lower without digging the entire pipe lower. And they've installed it as shallowly as possible. And a 50 mil sprinkler is 50 mils, right? Well, it's a little bit longer than that. 60 mils, right? All those pipes could get hit by a residential aerator. Do you know what I mean? Because some of them go 70, 80 mil. A commercial aerator is going to hit them all, right? But the final thing is the real problem that I had is there were certain areas where I was right on lawn mowing, and I would keep breaking the nipple of the sprinkler and be clueless that I would do it, because you ride the mower on it, the wheel goes over it, there's no play in the system at all, snaps the nipple, you can't hear it, you're not hitting it with the blades or anything like that. You run the pressure, and the pressure is lost. And of course, what we talked about before is these systems are engineered for how much water flow there is. And basically what had happened is they had engineered it to within a mil of its limit there. So there was just so you want to have some space left in its capacity, so if something breaks, at least the other sprinklers sort of trickle out.
So when
you go.
Yeah. When we do those, like when we break down like a zone into sprays, obviously liters per minute is crucial and all that sort of stuff. But whenever I get the liters per minute, I actually minus 20%, and then I play with that number. So
nice.
Going from like a MP 1000 1.64 liters a minute is, and you've got say 20 liters to play with, I'm minus 20%. So we're actually playing with 16 liters a minute.
Yeah, 16 liters a minute.
Yeah, and
you can do about 10 sprinklers on that.
We can put about 10 sprinklers on that. So, and then you've got that wriggle room, and they're all operating at a good pressure. And I think that's sort of been the easiest way for me to make sure that each sprinkler is working. I mean, it gets to a point. It almost gets to a point where you can do it by I've been caught out a few times, but out of 100 times, it's probably 2 where I've sort of get to a point now where you can almost do it by eye. My apprentice I was talking about earlier, he laughs at me all the time when we do a pressure and flow test, because I'll actually look at the pressure coming out of the tap and I'll go 600 to 650, and he'll go, oh shit, you're wrong. Every time he tells me I'm wrong, and then he tests it, and I'm pretty smack on, like it's within a 50 kPa sort of window. And he's like, how do you do it? It's like, you just learn, like you just look at it.
You
look at it every day.
Exactly.
But I think the biggest crucial part is, like, while we're in this topic, is the understanding between kPa and the pressure of a flow and the actual flow rate, like the liters per minute. That's to me.
So how do you measure those? Sorry. Yeah.
Well, Bunnings have this new little gadget where you just clip a flow rate. I can't remember what brand it is, but you can get it up. It's just like a little hose clips onto like a hose nipple, and then you just turn the tap on, and it's got a little reader in it. It tells you.
Oh, the Gardena one.
I believe maybe Well, it's either Gardena or Holman, really, isn't it? Or Pope.
Yeah, most of that stuff. I believe that. Do you know Pope is owned by Toro? I
Yes, I
learned
did
that
know
last
that.
week. I
Yes.
did. No. I think I'm looking for. So you keep talking because I believe Brenton from the Aussie
Yeah,
Lawn had one of these on.
so yeah, so well, anyway, yeah, the difference between liters per minute and kPa is crucial because kPa is the operating pressure that a nozzle needs, which has absolutely no relevance to liters per minute. Liters per minute is how much water is coming out and how much water is
Yeah.
required. Pressure is how much the nozzle needs to operate. So, you know,
Yeah.
180 at the nozzle is normally pretty good. 180 to sort of 250 is normally pretty good.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're running at 900 kPa, I have a client that runs 900 kPa, and all his stuff missed. He loves it, and I tell him every time I go on service, I was like, we need to turn this down. No, I love it. Okay, whatever. It's your garden. You're happy with it. So, but what you'll find is if you've got a higher operating pressure, especially the MP rotators, I mean, they are the most popular nozzle on the market by a long shot now. And they miss. What you'll find is if the pressure is way too high,
Yes.
they'll shoot their oscillating fingers out, but they'll also have a huge mist around them as well.
So let me just pause you there, Kallee, for a second. Sorry, but there'll be some people on here who we're talking over their heads. So let me explain a couple of things really quickly. MP rotators are the pop-up sprinkler nozzle that have lots of little like fingers shooting out, and they spin around in circles. They look very pretty. Yeah. And we're talking about that compared to your normal pop-up, which is like a flat spray that goes there. Yeah. And then the one that you see in big ovals and things like that are typically called a gear drive sprinkler, right? And there's also there's R-vans, which are similar to the MP rotators, and they do the same sort of thing. But they're all different, right? You can't have them all on the same station. Not if you ask Rainbird. What do you mean?
The R-vans are like it in a bit if you ask Rainbird.
What I memeant is that they're all different, and then that pop-up fan style is not the same thing as a rotator style, which is not the same thing as a gear drive. If you have them all on the same station, they will actually deliver different amounts of water. All nozzles are not the same, blah, blah. This is why you need so many parts. Some of you it's going over your head. Take some time. It'll make sense eventually. But some of us who have been doing this for a while, it's like, oh, yeah, we know what we're talking about. So I just pause you there. Yeah. Back to what you were saying about the MP rotators misting when there's too much pressure.
And while we're on the fact of going over the head, like I'm happy to answer messages through Instagram and everything like that. I did a podcast a few weeks ago and I had quite a few guys messaging me with questions, and I'm more than happy to answer anything that anyone. I'd rather, as I've said 100 times, I'll probably say 100 times more until this is finished. But like a rising tide rises all ships. If I'm helping educating people, I'm more than happy to. Don't feel like you're silly if you're going to message me and ask me what an MP rotator is. I'm more than happy to help you and message and help you find exactly the nozzle you need for that application. But where were we? I like this.
High pressure. Too much pressure going through MP rotators makes them mist. Now, what I'll say as well is misting is bad, people, because the wind can blow it around. You actually want it to fall down.
You're not getting You're not getting a direct water.
It kind of looks sexy to have it all sort of blast around, like you're in a magical, mystical wonderland. But you kind of want, for the most part, a larger droplet size. Get down to the soil. Look at us retic guys talking about sprinkler droplet sizes. It's good. I mean, this is helpful for people. This is one of the things that people don't understand is I had this job. I put this on my Instagram stories. I had a day, right, where we were doing part of our service, our packages, we test all of our sprinkler systems at the start of September or early September, so that when the hot weather comes, we know they're all good. Just light maintenance stuff, clean out some nozzles, blah, blah. I showed you one of the videos of that root growing down the nozzle. But I put this on my story. So for those who are on my Instagram, you would have seen this. We had one job that had a broken poly fitting. I dug it up, and it was 13 millimeter poly pipe going through someone's garden straight into a 15 millimeter fitting that you talked about, and it was snapped. And I had a look at the rest of the pipe because I had to fix something else. The rest of it was 19. So I bet you the homeowners just added something in at some point. I just left it. Whatever. I don't have the time to fix it. What was that?
I can solve that. I can solve that. I'll send you a photo when we're done. The best. Okay. And there's an Instagram page called Irrigation Diamonds, and this is the best one I've ever had. I went to service a house because this guy was complaining that there was no pressure in his system. There's never been any pressure. His son-in-law or his cousin or someone had installed it with no irrigation knowledge. And it was like pretty much a standard square front lawn. It was like a circle around the middle, like a large circle around the sort of middle of the around the edges, I guess, middle edges. And then there was a T going off into every corner. Now the circle was in 19 mil, but then there was a reducing T into drip line.
Oh, wow.
And then the drip line then went into a 13 mil to 19 mil riser, 15 mil riser, and then into a pop-up.
So what's the drip line supposed to be doing? Do you think they bought the wrong
just part of the lateral? Yeah, you either ran out of pipe or I don't know.
It fits, so we'll just chuck it on. Drip line's got lots of holes in it, people, if you didn't know. Yeah. So it's just going to be... Yeah. And the other thing about drip line underground where there's lawn is you always get roots eventually growing through the drip line in a little hole. So then you just clog up your everything even more, right?
Yeah. Oh, man, I am an advocate for drip line in the right place, but not in lawns.
No. Well, so that was the first one I had that day. And the second one I had was as we were testing something, Elliot, who I was working with that day, he pointed out that the poly riser, you know how he talked about the depth, right? He brushed across the sand and you could see the poly riser like that shallow. Like literally, if you had some soccer boots with a slightly sharper stud on a warm day, you might puncture it, like very, very, very shallow. I have no idea what they're doing there, but a lot of these front lawn packages that we have over here, like these houses, they're just built to a price point, and their landscaping comes with it, and so it's just chuck it in, whatever, and everyone gets irrigation, but it's all slam it down as fast as possible, which is great if you run an irrigation business because you get a lot of call outs to fix it all, and it's great if you run a lawn care business because they don't do any soil preparation. You need year-long programs to help it, but so what we were talking about, back to pressure, we don't want it misting. I actually want to match. So people, you want to match the pressure to the sprinklers that you have. So if you're getting not enough pressure, you're going to get crop circles or, funny shapes in the lawn because you're not going to have enough to, cover the whole lawn. If you've got too much pressure, it's going to mist away. What were you talking about before we went on all those side rambles about MP rotators and too much pressure?
Oh, I can't remember. You challenged me. It's now 11:31.
That's true.
Yeah, it's it's fun. I'd rather be sitting here than not sitting here. I like this. This is fun.
But you're gonna say something else. We'll move on. I won't make you embarrassed. I'll ask you my next question then. So, what is the number one mistake you see other than what we've already talked about? What are you seeing when someone who just jumps on the good old Google gets a couple of advice? Most common mistake you're going out there fixing that we could prevent in this podcast.
Can I have a top three?
That's illegal. How dare you? Okay, fine.
Okay. The number one issue is obviously tap timers. Like having a tap timer. I mean, it's almost not even cheaper, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I actually, as contradictory as this is, I mean, I was building a veggie patch. This is like 2 plots worth of a veggie patch with my 4-year-old the other day, and I admittedly bought a tap timer for that. But that was more so he could do daddy work and all that sort of thing, and I could do some stuff with him, and it was easy, and it would be done in an hour before his attention span lost it. But like I went to Bunnings and had a look at the price of the tap timers. I mean, a solenoid valve's 25, 30, maybe $40.
Yep.
And a little bit of wiring if you're clever with where you're putting the controller. A cheaper controller is $100. And you're looking at these tap timers and they're $150. So for the price point, it's almost there. Like it's almost the same for an extra 20, 30, maybe $50. You're paying pretty much the same thing. And I mean, putting the wiring in or doing all that sort of stuff, like that's all YouTubeable. As much as I don't encourage that, get your closest professional to do it, or if you want to have a crack at it, do it. Make sure you're really educated in what you're doing, but making sure that you can do an irrigation system with a solenoid valve, like if we're just talking one zone, like we would be with a tap timer, make sure you do it with a solenoid valve. Make sure you do pay that money and get the controller and get the stuff. Like I'm on quite a few pages on Facebook about like irrigation help and all that sort of stuff. And that's the biggest thing I find. Oh, this tap timer's failed on me. Well, of course it has. Like it's not made for residential use. It's made for temporary applications. Like I've spoken to Rainbird about like a sales rep for Rainbird, and he said to me, like, I put a tap timer in a house years ago, and he said, oh, and then it failed, and he goes, oh, well, that it's failed because it's not made for this. It's made for temporary watering. The best thing I can explain is, you come home from the day at a nursery, and you come home and you've got 40 pots, and you don't have time to plant them, so you plug in a tap timer, sprinkler at the top. You go to work for the next week. They're all survived next weekend. You get out and plant them. That's the sort of thing where tap timers come into play. But overall, making sure you utilize the fact that there is solenoid valves. That's what they're there for. Tap timers aren't made for that. Realistically, the pricing's not that much different. Like it's not like you're comparing apples to oranges. You might be comparing a nice apple to a cheap apple, but like it is apples for apples. That's one. Tap timers, they annoy me. Arctic risers, going back to our Arctic riser point, that is a huge frustration. As I said earlier, we don't service during spring and summer, but when we do service, like I to be honest, again, it's sort of the same tap timer rant. There you go. That's an articulated riser. So
I'll describe this for people who are listening. Sorry, I'll describe this. It's basically. Oh yeah, where am I going?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So an articulated riser is basically a bunch of 3 elbows and a normal riser. And what it kind of does, it's hard. Go watch this if you're going to jump on YouTube. It's about a bit after the hour mark. And basically what these are they will, because of the 3 elbows, you can swivel them around in any kind of direction. And if someone treads on the sprinkler, then the sprinkler won't, like the nipple won't snap like I was talking about before. You'll get a twisting motion in the articulated riser because it can kind of move to any spot. And it's just, what is it, $2, $4, depending on $6, like each. And it's like, why wouldn't you do it? Like other than cost cutting, you know what I mean?
Smart Water's going to tell me off for putting another irrigation store on. Get your stuff from Smart Water, everybody, if you live in Melbourne. There you go. That's a good That's a good photo. Is there anything in images? I feel like that might help.
Images. I'm just scrolling people for those who are listening. I feel like some
There you
people
go.
are
That's a good
getting
one.
the best thing they've ever
That one
got.
right there.
This one here?
Yeah. Yeah, this is free education.
There you go.
So that's
100%.
the makeup there. So, but that again, see Ben, I don't just pick on you. I'm going to pick on this image as well. That T in the PVC should be
Yeah,
laid.
it's the wrong way.
Yeah, should be laid towards me because it will snap.
It should be pointing like 90 degrees down,
Flat.
a quarter
Yeah.
turn down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But I wonder, yeah. Anyways, it's. Do you know what sprinkler that is off the top of your head? I have a guess.
PGP.
Yeah, I was thinking that PGP. They're very common. So your second one is
which PGP?
PGP Ultra. Oh dear.
Yeah, I think you might be right. It does have a green. I think it is an Ultra.
So I'll tell you a story about them later. But can you tell me your next thing that you've got on your list? First thing, tap timer. Second thing, not using articulated risers. Some people call them swing arms. Ben has been putting swing arms in with all of his sprinklers. So people watch his irrigation series. He's got proper, these style ones, big boy ones with the PVC pipe, but he's got massive sprinklers on the end of them. So it is horses for courses. Most people, the $2 one is going to suit your residential properly just fine.
Yeah.
So much better than nothing. So what's your third thing there?
The third is how people lay drip line. So when you're laying drip line, I understand that sometimes it is hard when you're working. Yeah, go
that one.
No, that's a drip ring. That is quite neat. I was quite happy with that. It was very windy that day. That's obviously a drip ring setup.
Okay, tell us about that while we're on this video. Explain it for people who are just listening. What you've done and why it's important.
So that black poly is obviously it's a sub-lateral or sub-main, sub-lateral, so both the same thing. And when you're talking about this, that's what comes off your solenoid valve that we were referring to before. That runs in, and then the water runs through that, through the double T's, and then into a drip ring. Those drip rings have 6 emitters in each. We cut them to that, so it's all getting the same amount of water. So most drip line is standard drip line is 2 liters an hour. So 6 times 2 is 12. So 12 liters an hour, which is whatever a minute. It's
fine. It's almost exactly. It's always midnight. Yeah. Don't get too stuck in that.
So 12 liters an hour. So now they can then tailor what time, how long through each season. They can then tailor how long to have it on for as guidance from their gardener or landscaper or whoever it may be. That's they can tailor that to suit what that plant needs.
Yep. And so, what are you going to say about the normal drip line?
If you go to that video, go up.
This one back here. Oh no, we're going back up.
I got the same one. Yeah, if you go onto that video, you can't pause on Instagram, can you?
Yeah, you can. I can pause it.
So if you go to here? It should be that. Yeah, it should be that one.
So what are we looking for here?
I could be wrong. So we're looking at the stripes in the drip line. I think I might have sent you to the wrong one. I have sent you to the wrong one.
This is you at Marvel Stadium doing work at Marvel Stadium.
This is us.
So you just
that
wanted
one
to show off that, didn't you?
No, it's still at Marvel Stadium. Don't worry. I'm all about revving up people at Marvel Stadium. So this is valve boxes. This is commercial valve box assembly. This is a little bit different to a setup that you would get at like a residential house. I mean, we still do the geofab and all that sort of stuff, but isolating into that one valve, normally would have a bank of 2 to 4, depending on the size of the property. And then this is me talking. I'm talking in this video. If you want to go to my Instagram and watch it, but I don't.
Viper
I hope
Irrigation.
I've done it. Viper. It's named after Randy Orton, the professional wrestler, if anyone was wondering.
You did tell me I needed to ask you what the thing was. Here we go. This is what we're looking at here.
There you go. So that's the drip line. So that, I mean, I didn't actually personally do it, so I guess I can say it. But that's perfect drip line. There's no fault in that drip line. There is headers and collectors outside of this image for those wondering if that's not perfect. There isn't headers and collectors. There is headers and collectors that run up sort of where those valve boxes are at the top of the image, but they may not have even been installed at the time that photo was taken. I was standing on top of an excavator at that time. But that's 30 mil spacings. That's done with a 300 mil spacing. That is actually done. We have it's offcuts of PVC, but we have 300 mil sticks that we cut into, so we can do that perfectly. And I mean, you know, that's pretty extreme. Like, you know, not even we install that on a day-to-day basis. Like, obviously, it was a huge project of ours, and the I guess the standard of work was extremely high. I mean, we do keep a very high standard of work and quality, but obviously this was a little bit freakish. But
you don't want to stuff up the guns outside Marvel Stadium and have 50,000 people walk out to the next Big Dash game or whatever AFL game it is, or you know, whatever concert's going on, and your handiwork is stuffing everyone up.
Yeah. But but running like that, like we find, like I couldn't tell you how many times I scroll through Instagram and see guys that run drip line, they plant their plants and then they run drip line to all their plant. Like it's like they're doing it with a soaker hose. They're running all the drip line to all their plants. Now that is a sign that people don't actually know how the rooting system of a plant works, because plants actually, when plants root, they chase water. They don't actually. It's like, you know, when you're putting the plants in, like not one plant has died there, which is a perfect explanation as to why this drip line is efficient. Because what happens is when you plant a plant, put the plant in the ground, the roots then settle in the ground, and then the roots start to voyage and grow. And what is happening is the roots are then going to look for water. They're finding their source of water, which is what the drip light's doing. And then the canopy of the plant will actually duplicate the roots. With most plants, obviously there's exceptions, but most plants, there's different. Like, you can't spray roses, for example. I don't actually know why. I'm not going to pretend I know that. But from my education, which is probably something I should research, is drip line for roses. And it's always been a rule ever since I've sort of been in the game. It's always been drip line for roses. So
this is because of the leaf moisture. So there's certain plants that have susceptibility to fungal diseases. So with like black spot with roses, when you are misting regularly, the moist leaves is what causes the black spot. So you can prevent black spot by watering straight into the soil. There's other plants like that as well, but that's a real common problem. And I totally get what you're saying. So I'm going to explain this again for people listening. There is essentially what he's run is like, he hasn't just run one line to where a plant might be. The entire area is covered up and down and back and forth with this strip line. And it actually looks kind of like a fingerprint, like a massive fingerprint where, you know, there's all these lines, you know, covering an entire area, right? It's like the garden bed, a giant has implanted their finger and there's all the fingerprints there. And what that means is that the tiny little holes that are what you called emitters, which I call holes, it's everything's being watered. So that's what you're trying to describe. And if you just plonk a little line across the top of your garden bed, hoping that the drippers are going to, you know, cover everything, you've only got one little spot that's actually getting water. And that's why you put that ring around the tree, right? Because you didn't want to just have one little spot. I find this as well. I like what you're talking about here because, shrub sprinklers, which are basically just little soaker hoses. For those who don't know, they don't spray out. They just sort of like bubble up. I think people call them bubblers or whatever. And people put them right next to the trunk of the tree. For some trees, that's not how they go. If a tree has a deep taproot, maybe in the center, but you actually want a ring of water around what you would roughly call the drip line of the tree. Obviously, the drip line of the tree is going to grow over the time, but you would typically expect that as a tree gets more mature, it needs less reliance on irrigation. So that what you were doing in that video before as well, people, is the little ring we talked about here is actually around where the drip line. So that circle around there is going to be wet. And for the next couple of years, and really going well beyond that as well, the most important part when the tree most needs the water is getting the water. And then one day when this is really well established and the roots are massive, well, it's still getting water from this, but it's, not as needed. Whereas if you just had one little shrub bubbler in there, a much smaller surface area is actually getting watered. And it's, in my opinion, it's not as effective. It's cheaper and it's easier to install, but they're the kind of things, like think of the effort and the time it took you to do every single one of those instead of just putting a single bubbler, But, that's the kind of stuff that separates.
Well, that's a perfect example about going back to, like, how we did 3 zones in half a day. That job got charged out at 2 zones, and we were there for, I think we were there for about 7 or 8 business days. So, that's a perfect example. Like sitting there, as you can see in the caption, it was 110 drip rings. Like it's 55. It was 55 drip rings in a zone, and we were sitting there for ages, just pumping along, and it was a bare paddock behind us. So it was windy and all that sort of stuff. It was raining, and so that sort of stuff blows out. But definitely. Like obviously, drip rings are a necessity. I think there is easier ways to do that. That's just more of like the, I guess, professional looking way of doing it. You can just come straight out of that tee in the sublateral or submain and swirl it around and Bob's your uncle. But I think that's better looking, and you can take pride in your work of it looking like that rather than a couple of swirls. And I think that's the difference. Like I always, if anyone listening to this has followed me for a little bit, it's definitely something that I harp on a little bit about and call it landscapers drip, where like if we go to a service call, we'll see some drip line. Like I always call it landscapers drip because it's just funny and it's a little thing that I had going. But
yeah.
It's definitely you can tell whether an irrigation guy's installed a drip line system or landscapers come in and just try their hardest. But I think just the whole thing with the drip line and the favors of it is crucial to a garden in the way that it's easier to maintain. It's easier to, like, you obviously have the flush and air valves in it as well. But I love drip line. Like, there's a lot of people that hate it and all that sort of stuff. Established gardens, we don't put it in. We do put sprays in. But in any new garden bed or anything like this, we'll always opt for drip line.
How important is head-to-head coverage with sprinkler systems? He's shaking his head at me.
I'm shaking my head. I keep forgetting that this is also a video and an audio. So I do apologize for those other people that I'm talking like it's video. I'm sorry. I will try and be more
no, that's fine. They just watch on YouTube. They should stop their workday right now. Go on YouTube. No. So head-to-head coverage. I'll give some context for those who are completely unaware, is that sprinklers don't water evenly. So if you got your nice big pop-up in a circle, sometimes depending on the brand and depending on all sorts of situations, maybe the edge of the ring of the circle actually gets a little bit more water than right next to the sprinkler, or maybe right next to the sprinkler gets a little bit more than the edge of the circle. And so if you're running a system, you want, well, what I've been told is that there's some level of importance to having overlap with the sprinklers. How important is that on a scale of 1 to 10?
So 6. I'm going to be controversial.
Ooh.
Overlap, 100%. Like that's, yes. Head to head, I was always trained head to head, always. Like when I was starting up in solar irrigation stuff, like I was always trained. You have to go head to head. You know, the plants are going to die, the grass is going to die if you don't go head to head. Overlap is what I train my guys in. Everything has to overlap. Because for me, it doesn't make sense. Because if we're going head to head, we're getting double the amount of, like, you're getting 2 sprays over the top of each other. Sorry, I'm trying to be audio and visual again. You're getting 2 sprays over the top of each other. Whereas if it does overlap, you're still getting 100% coverage. Because if you're not overlapping, then that's when the coverage factor starts to come in. But you're still getting 100%, making sure that all the whole spray is getting that overlap as well. Like if you're irrigating a square, obviously you want to make sure that the all the corner sprays are overlapping. And the way that we overcome that is we actually put 6 in rather than 4. A lot of guys put 4 in, whereas we'll put 2 parallel to each other on a straight. So then that sprays in and you're getting that complete coverage. And that's just the way that we overcome that. But yeah, head to head, I mean, there is a you know, an argument for it. I'm definitely not saying that it's wrong. I think it's just different people do different things. And again, I'm talking in a domestic setting. I'm not talking in a commercial setting. Like in a football oval, my knowledge isn't as high. Like obviously I do have that knowledge there where I've irrigated football ovals in the past, or ovals in general, or soccer pitches, or whatever sport we're talking. But yeah, I think that the most important part is you do have that overlap rather than having the that head-to-head coverage. But as I said, there is an argument for it.
We were doing this work. I was showing photos before of a school oval that we were struggling at. I actually put it on my Instagram story today. Now, I'll get that up so we can put it on the screen. But the situation or the problem that we've had at school oval is a pressure issue. And we ended up getting some. Let me skip to the next one. And pause there. Can you see, for those people who are watching, those big crop circles forming on the oval?
Well, you got to share the screen.
It's getting too late.
Hey.
I'm not. All right, let's go back onto here and crop circles. Here we go. So I'm trying to pause this. It's going to go away soon because it's a story. Bam, it's gone. That was the only chance of watching that, people. But the crop circles are caused by, you know, it shows how the sprinkler doesn't actually throw evenly. Now there's lots of pressure, so it exaggerates that. But a lot of people don't know that. I think it's just even waterage. And what I find interesting with them is that sprinkler system is in such a windy area, and it's windy almost 24/7. And the runtime you need on those big gear drives, in WA, we're allowed 2 10mm water rings a week, right? To get 10 millimeters of water, they need to be, I haven't retested it since we did some upgrades, but when the pressure was low, it was 1 hour and 40 minutes of runtime on those massive gear drives to get 10 millimeters, right? Which means it's 9 hours of watering to do the oval, because I think there's 6 stations or something like that, right? So there's no possible way for you to water the oval and have it be, what's the word? Not when it's windy. And so when you think about your head-to-head coverage, it's kind of being ruined by the wind anyway. And for me, it doesn't matter too much because the oval is so big, the wind is kind of going to blow it sort of onto the oval anyway. You know, some of it's going to be lost down the street and all that sort of stuff, but it's not like that bad. But yeah, it's just something else that came to mind as we're thinking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely, I think that I mean, we don't play. Admittedly, like we don't play with gear drives too much, but I think wind does definitely play a factor, especially when we are talking the smaller MP rotators or R bands or whatever kind of domestic sort of sprinkler you're talking about. If you are in an open thing, like obviously hopefully everyone's savvy with lawns in good mix backyard. I've been there a couple of times now. And we're going to irrigate it on Wednesday and Thursday. But
this podcast might come out when you are there doing that. That'd be great.
Perfect.
Cross-pollinating content right there.
There you go. So hopefully it's come out and everyone's listening to it while I'm sitting there with my trencher ripping up his backyard. But
Yes.
that's an open backyard. So we had to play into that. It's very the wind does flow through there pretty easily and that sort of thing. So bringing that into factor, I mean, we still are going to be using MP3000s from what I understand. Smart Water are actually coming to the party and supplying everything for him. But yeah, from what I believe and the discussions that I've had with the designers, we are using MP3000s. The reason we're using MP3000s is for like water conservation, if that's another topic. But at the same time, like the argument with water conservation and watering, as you're talking about, like with mills, you still have to spew out as much water to get those mills.
Yes.
As what a gear drive would do. So it's just about that watering time and all that sort of stuff. But I'm sure me and Nick are going to work together quite fine on working out scheduling and all that sort of stuff.
I want to share this to the screen as well because this is super helpful for some people. This is a WA article, which obviously we have sprinkler restrictions. And one of the things that's really interesting is you have a look here. So we've got our standard pop-up or fixed spray sprinkler, right? To get 10 millimeters, their suggested runtime is 13 to 16 minutes, right? And obviously it varies on what your water pressure is at your house and all that kind of stuff. If you go to a rotary style sprinkler, which that's an R-van, isn't it? Not an MP.
Yeah, that's an R-van.
Yeah, so look, that style there. Their suggested runtime is 40 to 60 minutes. And that's what we find as well. And then we go to gear drives here. They're saying 30 to 40 minutes. I find that the bigger the gear drive, the longer the runtime has to be because it's covering a larger area. So I kind of find the really big ones are getting close to an hour sometimes. And then your drip line is 30 to 40 minutes. A real common thing that I get is everyone, because they're used to the standard pop-up or fixed spray or the flat spray sprinkler that is, just the most common thing around. They're used to like 15 minutes being enough. And so then they get an MP rotator and they put it on for 15 minutes. And it's an incredibly shallow water. And we get it all the time with clients who are like, I'm running my sprinklers, nothing's happening. I had a lady actually, I kind of felt bad because I sort of felt like I was ripping her off in the end. But one of our team quoted aeration, wetting agent, all that kind of stuff. And they hadn't asked that question, but we'd gone there and she'd gone, I'm having problems, blah, blah. And we looked at it and we were just like, your soil's like super dry. So let's aerate it, wetting agent, get the most out of the watering you're putting down. And then I went to do the job. I didn't quote it. So I'm there to do the job. I've never been there before. We get chatting and she's like, oh, I feel really bad, but I'm watering my lawn every day. Right. I'm like, what? Because it's dry. And I'm like, you're watering it every day. She said, like, I've been watering it for 10 minutes every single day and nothing's happening. And I was like, what sprinklers do you have? And she had MP rotators, 3000s too, like the really big boy ones. So for those who don't know, 1000s, 2000s, 3000s, all throw different lengths as well. And there's like 17 different freaking varieties for what the angle of them is. And it's why you need so many parts. What are they, $14, $15 each? What do they cost now? I haven't bought.
There's actually 800s and 3500s as well.
That's true. Yeah. I don't think I've ever bought anything other than 1000s, 2000s, 3000s. And there's 4. So there's let's not get into it, but there's like 4 different angle types for each one. right?
Yeah.
So what's that? 16 varieties of pop-ups you could have.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And
At
then
least.
center strip, side strips
Yes,
as well.
true. So they're the ones that do this, like your skinny kind of.
Yes.
Anyways, there's so many, and that's just for anyways. So you guys get the idea about how if you specialize in this and you have all the parts in the back of your ute, even if you charge a higher hourly rate, you can be more efficient and competitive on price. But this lady was watering for 10 minutes every single day, so 70 minutes a week. And I showed her this exact webpage from the WA Water Corp, right, which is the authority that tells you not to run your sprinklers. I said, you need to run your sprinklers for 40 to 60 minutes twice a week, which means you can actually put out twice as much water as what you're putting out, because she was putting out 70 minutes a week of water, right? Or roughly twice, a little bit less. But she could put out 100 minutes, 120 minutes, or 80 minutes, or whatever it was. And by watering in 2 hits, you're getting a deeper water, not a surface level, shallow water that's evaporating away. And I still did the aeration, wetting agents, all sorts of stuff. It definitely helped. But what was really the core problem was just thinking that the MP rotors were going to give as much water as your standard pop-ups there.
And I think that's just part. Of having that knowledge. I mean, it's not hard. It's like, it's a quick Google and you're at an MP chart. I was just looking at one then. And you can see how much. Yeah, you can Google it.
What do you want me to Google?
Hunter MP nozzle chart. So obviously, yeah, and you just jump on and you can see it. If you go to
this one here,
you go. No, I'm pointing like you can see me.
I can see you, but I don't know what you're pointing at.
Yeah,
this one
across. Yeah, that one. Yeah. Okay. So obviously that's pretty daunting to look at. But it's as easy as reading a map. You're gonna get it.
I don't even know where this picture's gone. It's hidden.
Maybe go to images. Get it. Up into images.
Open image in new tab. Here we go.
There you go. Yeah. So like just using that 90 degrees map. Sorry for the people that are listening to this whilst working. But you're looking at a 90 degrees radius, the different pressures and flows, and then you're looking at precipitation millimeters and per hour, how many liters per minute it's using. So it's using 0.63 liters per minute. They changed it to 1.62 on the old bottom one minis, but anyway, that's the story. So yeah, so the whole point, the whole point of what I'm talking about now is, that it's as easy as that. It is quite daunting to look at, but once you break it down and you work out, the arc of what you're throwing and that sort of thing, it is quite an easy, I guess, map to read.
Yep. Do you get it commonly where someone will take they got the MP rotators on their system, a nozzle breaks and they just put a fan nozzle on?
Yeah. We get we get a whole lot of different stuff, but I think, I mean, in the client's defense, we are normally the first ones to get called or that sort of thing. But yeah, to be honest, I haven't really had anyone really have a go other than a couple. And yeah, they do. They just chuck a van nozzle on, and sometimes they're getting 8 foot van nozzles for an MP 3000 to try and cover it. And it's like, yeah, it's using the same amount of water. That's why the rest of them aren't working as well. But it's double the amount of water. That's why the rest of them aren't working like the other ones. Oh, but it's not throwing half as far as the other one did. It's because it's a totally different nozzle. But that's a pretty common issue. Or going back to the different pipe sizing for those nozzles is quite hard to work out as well. But I mean, I always say if people are like listening to this and trying to do it at home or anything like that. Like, 25 mil poly is always a safe bet for me. If DIYing it at home. You'd rather have more pipe or more pipe size than not enough pipe size. I mean, I have seen the opposite of that, where people use
that's what
50
I hear people
main
say in
height.
high school as well. Sorry, man. That's what she said about the pipe size there. We've done well to make it an hour and a half without making a sex joke about pipes.
Yes.
I was going to say, sorry, I cut you off. That was very rude of me, but I also was saying,
that's just the with pipe sizing and domestic settings, like 25 mil is always a safe bet. Obviously, drip line's 13 mil and that sort of thing, but getting a reducer and reducing it down is probably the best thing. I mean, admittedly, we used 19 for the first probably 2 years of the business, but now we use 25 predominantly. Yeah. Because you'd rather have too much pipe than not enough pipe. I mean, I have that problem personally with not enough pipe, but that's okay.
Yeah,
because
it's a bit harder to find a replacement at the local retic shop, isn't it? Than what it is for some of your clients' jobs. Now, the other thing I just realised as well with these MPs, so we've got how many nozzles did we say there were? 16, 20, something like that. And I realised that each one of them comes in male and female too. And that is what kills me. I had a job. I just realized I had a job where I put a fan nozzle on an MP because it was a female. I needed a female nozzle, and I only had male nozzles. And I was like, I don't know. I just had to do it. Luckily, there was plenty of pressure, but the only female, like I had to put something on, otherwise it's just going to be spewing out. And I didn't leave it, by the way. I just had to put it on until I could get one and come back and actually do it properly. But I'm like, it annoys me because I've got about 20 slots in my plastic briefcase thing, whatever you call it, your little work tackle box kind of setup that I can put nozzles in. And I've got 8 of them just taken up by fan nozzles. So you got your quarter, half, full. What's the other one I've got? Quarter, half, full. 3/4.
So the best way to overcome that problem for you is I would just go to van nozzles, like as in V, not F. Van nozzles, because then you're overcoming that, and a van is variable, adjustable, not variable, adjustable nozzle. I think that's what van stands for. Yeah, the twisty ones. That overcomes that problem.
Do you have problems with people like knocking them when they're up there, and then all of a sudden they're not covering the whole area?
No, not really. To be honest, I've never come across that problem.
I had a client. Now, admittedly, it was like the one right next to a path, right? Yeah. But I've had it a couple of times where it keeps getting knocked, right? So the other thing as well, it might be that it's, I don't know, but it could be that it's kind of like getting stuck up, maybe, and getting kicked after it's been used. But yeah, you're right. I've never really thought about that. I've just been trying to replace them like for like, but I've had, quarters, halves, 3/4, and fulls in a Toro head for my male, and then what am I even using? Rainbird for the female, and that's 8 out of my. What is it? Now, you didn't like my Rainbird comment there. Tell me about these brands. No. What am I getting?
I'm endorsed by both, apparently, according to my.
I was going to say there.
Instagram.
I think it's Rainbird, the green ones. Yeah, the green ones.
I think I've never had this argument on a public forum before with myself, but I think they both have. I think they both have needs. I think they both meet needs that need to be met in the industry. Like Rainbird, to me, their solenoid valve is the superior solenoid valve on the market. And this is to me, like I've used all different ones. I've used the Eurotrol ones. I've used the Hunter ones. I've used whatever else ones there are. And I always come back to the Rainbird DVF my favorite valve. I install them all the time. They're the valves that are in that video that we install at Marvel Stadium. You know, and that to me is like the superior valve. The valve
Yep.
boxes are the superior valve box. I feel like they're more rigid and they're easier to use. The drip line we use Rainbow drip line now. That, I mean, it's all the same sort of stuff, drip line. I think people listening to this that have half an idea will go, yeah, what's the difference between that and Enki drip line or whatever? But, you know, you're right. There is drip line that drips water 2 liters an hour out of every emitter. Like, it's not really too much of a difference for me. I mean, when you go up into vineyards and you're talking about Uni-Ram drip line and all that sort of stuff, that's all a bit different. But when you're talking residential or even parks, commercial drip line, it's all the same sort of thing. So that's sort of the rundown on the Rainbow side. The Hunter side, the Pro HC, the controller, that's it. There's no other controller we use unless the client, if we want to work in with the client, and we'll use a Hunter X2, which is sort of the little brother of the Pro HC. That you still can have the HydroWise app, which is the HydroWise app. For those who don't know what the HydroWise app is, it's an app that you can use on your phone to control your irrigation system, which to me is the most superior app. Which, I mean, that's I guess that's why my opinion on the Pro HC is so high, because it's very easy to link into that HydroWise system. I mean, I have a little old lady, MJ, from actually around the corner from our factory, and she's got quite literally one veggie patch area it's on 2 zones, and she uses, here you go, the Pro HC controller.
Yep.
And she uses it on her phone. You know, I mean, she's 80 years old. You know,
Awesome.
not many 80-year-old ladies are too sex savvy. No offense to 80-year-old ladies out there. But
did you say tech savvy there?
Yeah.
It sounds like, I thought you said sec savvy, and I was like, whoa, hold on a second.
No.
That might have been my ears, but maybe not what you said. Yeah, but she's not too tech savvy. No, but no, she is tech savvy enough to use this.
Yes, and I've tried all the other controllers, and I'm not sitting here shitting on anyone else, but we use the Pro HC because it's the easiest one for me to hand over as well. I mean, that's a crucial part. Like, I can hand over a Pro HC now in 10 minutes. Like, unless obviously the client has more questions and all that sort of stuff, which we're happy to follow up with. But at the end of the day, that's sort of where we're at, and I can't see us moving anymore. Sorry, I'm just moving my leg because it's about to go dead. But I love the Pro HC, and then moving on to the other Hunter products. Pro sprays, to me, are the best pop-up sprinklers. They're a little hack for people out there. If you've come this far into the podcast, you can have a little hack. So Hunter sell 2 different, which is that PRS there, which is has a check valve in it, or there is a check valve installed into a pot. They do sell one with a check valve installed, which is about $40 compared to about $6 that you buy a conventional Pro Space for. You can actually buy a check valve that it pops into the bottom of the internal of the sprays, and yeah, it's the same thing. And I think the little, and it's like the size of a little Barocca, and you just push it into the bottom of it, and it works. And they're about $4. So instead of paying $40 for a check valve Pro Spray, you can pay $10 and get your Pro Spray and your check valve, and you just push it in. There you go.
What does a check valve do? What does a check valve do?
Check valve stops the water from coming through when there's not enough pressure to push the check valve through. A check valve is sort of like a gate, if you like. In simple terms, it's a gate that sits through, and pressure won't. That if the solenoid valves off, but there's still water coming down the hill or, going to the lowest head, it'll stop the water from going through that bottom head.
If I was
And
to
all the other heads to push up to.
if I was to cut the top of a sprinkler off accidentally, right, that check valve, would that stop the nozzle off? Would that stop sand from getting back in the pipes?
No, because there's no pressure from the top of the
Right.
the top of the
Yeah.
plot pushing down, which is what you need.
Yeah. Well, I find very good. So basically, they're charging $30 to put in their own part into a sprinkler, and you can just do it yourself.
Yeah, you can do it yourself.
I also realized that I'm actually using Hunter nozzles, and I think we've got a bunch of Rainbird sprinklers. So you've just told me that the best sprinkler is the Hunter, not the Rainbird, but this is the ones that we have, the green ones.
We use the Hunter MPs most predominantly, and then we use their nozzles.
Yep, the twisting ones.
Yeah.
We're at an hour and 42. How are you going? You had enough coffee?
I'm good. I'm actually good. I was falling asleep at about 1 hour, and now you got me.
You're back. You got a second win.
I'm liking it. Yeah, it's fun.
Well, this is nice, just a little casual chat, isn't it?
It is nice to have a casual chat, but I think the whole world is falling into place around irrigation. I think we are getting that awareness that we want. I don't know, but I feel like this every year at this time of year when work starts to pick up, and I feel like we're gaining attention again. But it's been a good start to the season. We have been quite busy with everything, and I think that goes down to marketing and getting yourself out there and doing different things. Like, as you can see, that top video or top photo is us on the Great Ocean Road. We were lucky enough to actually get that job done in a day. We knocked off 5 zones of sprays, and a pump installation, which doesn't really do it justice. We did that whole pump installation, and then, well, there you go. There's some gear drives. I said I don't do it very often, but that's a good example as well for wind. Like using that wind as an example, like that's coming straight off, the Great Ocean Road. Straight like southerly. No, it's PGP Ultra.
Is it? There you go. Damn it.
There you go.
I was going to say you use some nice expensive ones. So
that was a good day though. Like,
getting through 5 stations in a day with 2 people. Charge them what?
We got the brothers. It says there my brother's a plumber. My brother's a plumber, and Brody, my apprentice, his brother was on school holidays, I think, at the time. He's 15 or 16, who I think he's coming on board with us next year. We're sort of still in talks with him about coming in for his apprenticeship. So I'm going to get both the boys, which is awesome because they both come from a really good background and they both work really hard. So it'll be good to have them both on if that's how it unfolds. But I think working on the business, I think as I sort of said to you off air, there's a guy in Melbourne, Victoria, Celsius Lawn. You can see him there. Mm-hmm. You like me photo. Sorry to all the guys out there, and I don't know much about the whole lawn world as much as I should with the Instagram and all that sort of stuff. But to me, and from what I've witnessed, he's up there with one of the best, and he sits, the knowledge that he has is unreal. And I'm not sitting here and going to plug him too much, but he works really hard at what he does and that sort of thing. So, but that's a good example of getting himself out there and that sort of stuff. Like that, the man could make I feel like, I don't know if I'm sitting here being biased for him, but sitting out there, he could make millions of dollars doing what he does, and really and make that jump, because guys like Nick from Lawns and Good Nick, and that sort of work really hard to get the the popularity of lawns and turf and all that sort of stuff out there. But yeah, I think he's a silent warrior, and it was sort of I did want to come on here and do that. So I've done my due diligence. He doesn't even know I was on this, and he doesn't even know I'm doing this. But
we didn't even know we were doing this about 7 hours ago.
Yeah. Yeah, 7 hours ago we didn't even know we're doing this. So yeah, he definitely didn't know I was doing this, but I just wanted to get on there and sort of give him a little bit of a give him a bit of a yeah.
And I believe he's been following the podcast since very early on. So
he has.
Yeah, good stuff.
So yeah, and I think you know, and that's all about branding and that sort of stuff, which goes back to what I was saying earlier with like being in the background with professional wrestling and that sort of stuff is that branding is so crucial to the world that, you know, I'm in now, and, you know, we're in now is at the end of the day, people are buying with emotions. People are buying, you know, like you sell a product and you're selling green turf or green grass, green lawns. Like I'm selling perfectly irrigated gardens. We're selling to people's emotions at the end of the day. We're selling to people's emotions, and that's, you know, that to me that's the crucial part. In my Instagram, you don't have to get it back up, but I'll explain it. Like we also specialize in ponds. Like we've done quite a few cool little, like not little, quite a few pond projects now where, you know, and that's also selling to people's emotions where we did a 70,000 litre pond started last year. And, you know, the guy had the money and he was happy to spend it, but the whole pond was actually an ecosystem classroom for his homeschool children.
Oh, wow.
And, you know,
that's cool.
Yeah, it was an $80,000 pond install. Yeah, so
it's probably cheaper than private school, and you get a pond.
True. Yeah, but like this guy, you know, but you're selling that emotion to them. Like I didn't really have to sell hard. He sort of came at me with all that sort of stuff. But people's whose house you go to and that, you know, I want a pond or I want irrigation. I mean, sort of getting into ponds like we do them a lot, but, you know, irrigation's our bread and butter, and we do 95% of our work's irrigation. But, you know, we're selling to people's emotions. You know, we're selling that they're going to have green, lush gardens. You know, we did a job down on the peninsula. We did a job down on the peninsula where this lady really wanted her bamboo to come good. It was all wispy and all that sort of thing. And I was sending it with a horticulturist at the time who was doing other work at her property, and we were talking about irrigating it. So all these bamboo all have shrubblers at each sort of pod. They were in sort of pod categories, pod areas around her garden, and we're putting shrubblers in each. But then the whole garden bed then had, I think they were MP rotators, or they may have been van nozzles. I can't remember now, but spraying over the whole lot to make sure, because obviously bamboo majority grows in rainforests, so they're used to being so wet, and that's where they flourish. So having that secondary source of water is, you know, trying to mimic that rainforest feel rather than, you know, conventional garden with a couple of sprays or a village plant or whatever, like that sort of thing. But yeah, selling that emotion to her was, we're going to do this, and this to make sure that your garden is green and lush, and that's the emotion that you're selling to her. Is you know, that point.
I want to just ask you two more questions before we wrap this thing up. And
I want to go to 1 o'clock.
You want to go to You want to go to 1 o'clock? Do you know what? We had a podcast with Ashley James, who's also in Victoria.
Yes.
He's the second latest start ever, right? So we started 6 o'clock my time, 9 o'clock your time, and we went to midnight. It was a 3-hour long podcast.
Yeah.
So you want to go to 1
I'll go to 1 o'clock. You got me. You got 33 minutes.
And if we go over, the world will end. Here's what I want to do. First thing that was coming to mind is you're talking about people. So there's a few things we're stretching out here. There's a lot to learn. First thing, a lot to learn about reticulation. and you can't learn it just from Googling. Obviously, Googling is going to increase your knowledge if you've got nothing, but you kind of got to get your hands dirty and try some stuff. And you can only try so much stuff at your own house. Would you be interested if there was someone who's listening to this podcast who was maybe a lawn contractor or a garden contractor in your area to come and do some work with you, maybe a day a week or a day a fortnight, and be like, hey man, I'll be a laborer. I just want to come and learn.
Yeah. So the two answers to that. I'm glad you brought that up because I definitely forgot. And I definitely brought this up with you in messages as well. But two things. Yes, absolutely. Like more hands on deck, the better. And if you have some sort of understanding, that's even better. But also I'm actually in the mix. It's on the other tabs on my computer at the moment, but I'm actually in the sort of process at the moment in writing an ebook to distribute to people. I was actually off the back of Lawns in Good Nick's success with his lawn programs and that sort of stuff. It'll be a similar thing. And I think, during the week while we're doing his house, we'll have a good chat about what worked for him and what didn't. And I'll sort of try and, take advice on from that and create that ebook style learning with links to YouTube videos and et cetera, and really try and start diversifying. Because like obviously looking at guys like yourself and guys like Lawn Tips and Tim the Lawnmower Man, Mick obviously, and all that sort of stuff. That's something that's crucial to the industry and to be able to be, define success, but successful in the industry. To me, and being able to teach other people is not only so beneficial to them and they're happy to do it, but it's also beneficial for me for putting in the work to writing the ebook and making that money on selling that ebook to people, as well as links to educational parts on YouTube and that sort of thing. So, and then, absolutely. But if you want to come and dig holes for me, absolutely. I will take you 100%.
Hopefully you also learn something more than just how to dig a hole. But I reckon it's a great opportunity. I think that's the best way to learn. I think the most stuff I ever learned, when I first started in the industry, when I first started in the industry, I was 15. But when I got a real job working in gardening, I was working at a school, and I was the assistant groundskeeper at the school, and I've got a lot of stories. I work with a guy named Doug, and Doug's such a good name for a gardener. We've also employed a guy named Doug, different Doug though. But I worked for this guy named Doug, and he was, with all due respect, not the sharpest tool in the shed. And anyways, they had to turn large areas of the retic on manually and all that sort of stuff. And you sort of got to learn a few different things here and there. And it was always breaking. And they would hire these retic contractors, the school would, to come in. And I would just go talk to them, oh, what are you doing here? How are you fixing this? What are you doing here? Blah, blah. And I learned quite a lot. I learned about articulated risers through that. I learned about the different styles of gear drives. What was really common, we talked about PGP Ultras. They're $35 or something like that, somewhere around there. It's been a while since I bought one. But there's a sprinkler that looks very, very similar, which I mentioned before, which is a Hunter I-25. And they look quite similar, but the Hunter I-25 is like $120. But it can handle so much more pressure. And what I learned, like at this school, like it was really common for a pop-up to break. And what would happen is the groundskeeper, who didn't know much about irrigation, would just look at it and go, that's a big pop-up. And they'd just go to the shop, get another pop-up that's the same size and put it in, but it's not rated for the same pressure. And so they were getting these, I-25s, replacing them with PGPs, and, they were breaking and things like that. I just learned all that kind of stuff, and from working with somebody, and they might have only come around 6-7 times in a year, for a couple of hours each time. But I learned so much, from a year and a half, 2 years in those kinds of roles. So I was just thinking, like, someone going and getting out there in the field and getting their hands dirty and seeing how you make those rings of, dripper line and installing different things, and even going to the shop.
I mean, we definitely like, as I said earlier in the podcast, we do a lot of work for landscapers, as as companies. And I'll always encourage, landscaping apprentices to come over and watch me put together a manifold, or ask me questions about a manifold, or like I've
Yeah.
even had a few landscapers, like, ones that are now mates, like, their apprentices come over to me for a week, and we've had them for a week, and they've just come out like they're my apprentice, and done all that sort of stuff, but sort of made sure that I was a little bit more hands-on, because they've only got a week, rather than my boys have got however long they want to put up with me for. But you know, and yeah, so it's definitely something that's beneficial, not only to them but for me as well. Like I get to look at it as another way of another person that I learned to be a leader for, and that sort of stuff. Because at the end of the day, I'm going off a little bit of tyrant on this one, but it's something that I'm quite passionate about. Is like with apprentices, we're not as an apprentice's boss. We're not only their boss as a especially younger ones, like not so much mature age apprentices, but the younger guys, 16 to sort of 20, we're not just their bosses, we're their role models. They're getting paid peanuts to come and work for us. Like, let's give them more. Let's give them, like, and that's not financially. Like, I'm a huge advocate for paying them, well, a little bit more. Like, I think Brody, my apprentice, begged $4 more than what the award is per hour. But
Over a year.
let's
$4 extra per year is what he gets.
Yeah, $4 an hour. Come on.
Yeah, no, come on. Yeah.
But I think giving them more, especially like this is getting more and more tirade. But anyway, like especially coming into this day and age with men's mental health and all that sort of stuff. I don't want to get too stuck on it, but working with blokes out in the field. Like 2 weeks ago, sorry, not 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, just before one of my main guy had left, I was having the shittest week probably of my life, just financially and business and personal, and the kids were being hard and all that sort of stuff, and it all accumulated, and I was having a really bad day, and I ended up like crying in the backyard. Like, no one was home, thank God, but I ended up crying in the backyard, and one of the boys came out and saw me there, and they were like, "What's up? What's up?" And, I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go home for a bit and have lunch and settle down and come back." And and I got both the guys when there was 3 of us, and I got them both out into the backyard. And I said, "Look, you guys saw me then, but that emotion's okay." And that's something that I really try and staple home with my guys, is having those feelings is okay, and talking about it is okay, and talking about it on an Australian wide podcast is also okay, and all that sort of stuff. Like, it's all normal. It's all things to do. And going back to what we were talking about with apprentices, is like, let's give them more. Let's not get them to dig holes, and let's not just go and do this, go and chuck in all the laterals and shut up, or go and dig that hole, go and push that wheelbarrow, shut up. It makes these guys feel worthless. Like, they're 16-year-old kids, like they don't know what they're doing, or 18-year-old kids or 20-year-old kids. They don't know. They don't even know if they want to be a landscaper. They don't know if they want to be a lawn guy or an irrigation guy. They have no idea. They hit puberty 2 years ago. Like, they don't know. And it's up to us to help them work out what they want to do. If our trade's not what they want to do, then so be it. Good. I'm glad. Like, I had the main guy that I was referring to before. He came today because Brody's taken the long week off because it's Melbourne Cup week this week, and he took the extra day and had the extra long week. So I had my old guy come back and fill a hole for me today. And he said to me, he goes, "I miss this joint." He goes, "I left and it was all good and well because he didn't like irrigation as a trade." And he goes, "But I miss this." He goes, "I miss working with you. I miss these chats. I miss this whole environment." And that's something that really humbled me and made me feel really good for the day, was I was able to create an environment that he felt comfortable in, and that he felt like he liked coming to work. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we do for work. Like, we can make grass green, we can make plants grow, we can push wheelbarrows, whatever. we're all still people at the end of the day, and making sure that that environment, that the people that the kids are working in or the adults are working in, is a safe environment, a fun environment. A couple of your mum jokes never went astray around here. That they're pretty savvy, but other than that, it's been a really good adventure for me to be learn to be a leader and a quote unquote boss. But anyway,
Yeah.
that was my tyrant. I'm done. Let's change the subject because that was a good
No,
one.
no, I'm happy to stay on that because one of the things that I'll twist it a little bit for you. We'll slightly head down a different rabbit hole, but we talk so much about so you got men's mental health, right? And men commit so much suicide, and you got the whole "Are you okay?" day and blah blah. Do you know, as a small business owner, this may be controversial for some people, but
You want to do it?
it's pretty common
I'll
sense.
get controversial.
I mean, it's not like we've never done that before either. If you're going to be honest in a podcast, that's somewhere between an hour and 3 hours, depending on the episode. You can't not talk about something that's controversial at some point. But the thing I think is controversial is people say, you got to focus on the mental health, right? And business shouldn't be about money. I think the number one way that you get good mental health in business is to have your money sorted so that you're not so distracted by whether or not you're paying bills or not, that you can actually spend some time and think about your employees and how they're going mental health wise.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest mistakes. I look back on the season, I was telling you off air, and I've told the story in the podcast before. We had a guy, a fantastic employee, Doug, who did a major back injury and is still having real problems now, not off workers' compensation. It's a year and a half longer, right? And it drove our business. It really made us struggle in multiple avenues. One was that he was a linchpin that a lot of the work went around, so the work became more difficult for other people because he wasn't there. And as for those who've heard the story, he originally was diagnosed as having a 6 to 12 week kind of injury, maybe a little bit more, so they didn't really know. And then it was sort of like every 2 to 4 weeks, it was like, oh, we'll check in another 2 to 4 weeks, check another 8 weeks, check another 2 weeks, check another 6 weeks, whatever it was. So we never replaced him. And so we were bleeding money, right? And it was fine to bleed money for the first 3 months if that's what we needed to. Great employee, let's work with him. But what ended up happening is so many balls started getting dropped because this linchpin wasn't there. And the main thing that happened is we had these team members who were overworking to compensate for the lack of Doug, right? And we were all willing to carry some extra weight because he'll be back soon, but then he never came back. And we kept having these problems. And what I found out is that I, as a business owner, stopped asking personal questions for people because my mind was so busy on numbers. So you rock up to work, and when someone's like, oh, I made a mistake, a tiny mistake becomes a massive mistake. Like a $100 mistake feels like a $2,000 mistake. And $100 mistakes happen all the time when you have employees. So we've changed everything and we've adapted everything. I haven't talked about this at all yet. People don't even know this, but my main employee now, or essentially our not our only employee, because we do have other people, but our main full-time person, crashed my truck on, what day is it? Friday? Thursday. Yeah, Thursday he crashed the truck. What is it today? Monday. So 3-4 days ago, he crashed my truck. Low speed accident. He's fine. Right. And anyways, the truck's getting quoted. I was so calm because we're in a better season financially now because we made the right changes that we needed to. And, when he calls me up, he sent me a text message actually first. And I call him up and it's like, yeah, okay, you're right. How's the truck? Fine, sweet. Go have a look at it. And you don't realize because it's a creep, it's a slow drift, right? it's kind of like when you're sleeping at the wheel or you're dozing at the wheel. You know, you don't quite notice that you've veered off the road until you're almost hitting the tree and you swerve back. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what it was like for me in that season, where you have employees who have difficulties. And I remember one employee, great person, won't name who it was, but they were working to kind of 6 o'clock every night, right? And a couple of my employees had families and kids and things like that at the time. And I was working till like, you know, to be honest, I've kind of done this for a long time, but I was working till sort of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, midnight, you know, most nights. And I sort of lost a grasp that I was working a lot at home. So I was still kind of with my family and I'd check in and stuff like that. But these guys are out on the road, and 6 o'clock at night, 3 times a week, you know, 4 times a week now, 5 times a week. And, you know, it got really tiring. And one day some small things went wrong, which blew the day out. It was like they had an opportunity on a Friday to finish at like 3 or 4 or something like that, you know, and they'd been working late and some things went wrong and it just, everything exploded emotionally. And I was so distracted by how busy we were and everything else going on that you don't nip those things in the butt. You have to be reactionary, which is not a good place to be in. So back to the mental health conversation, it's actually a lot of the mental health problems get caused by financial problems, not all, but a lot get caused by financial problems because, you know, you have somebody who maybe they feel a little underappreciated because you're not paying them what they feel that they're worth, but you're not paying them what they feel they're worth because you haven't made enough money from the work, and you haven't made enough money because you're not charging right. But the amount of work it takes to charge it right is you got to sit down with the accountant. It's cost you money. It's going to take all this time. You're barely handling things as it is. I'm telling so many people's business story right now because I've been there, done that many times over the years. And that's when the mental health, that's when it's hard to be a good boss. So people say, oh, business is not about money. If you got the money part sorted, a lot of the other things are so much easier. Like if you were making, let's make a number. If you made $10,000 profit a week, right? You would be sure as heck have a lot more time to ask your employees how they're going, you know? And the Are You Okay Day isn't just a nice little tag along day we do once a year. It's like, you know, those conversations happen, you know?
Yeah. I like getting into the, you know, gritty part of mental health. I think, you know, like I've been open with my apprentice and even, you know, the fellow that helped me today. Like, you know, I'm going like I signed up and booked in psychology appointments, that sort of stuff, and being open and honest with people and talking about that over, you know, and you know, even sort of encouraging them to go, you know, their mental health might be fine at the time, but, you know, making sure that they know, especially like my apprentice who's, you know, tells me that he looks up to me and, you know, that sort of stuff, telling him that sort of thing, because going to a psychologist when I was an apprentice was like, no, you're weak, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Weird. That's weird. That sort of thing. So, I mean, that sort of, that realm is to me the most important. Like the apprentice at the moment, he's got a girlfriend and they've been together for a year or so, and you know, I said to him, they're all like, it's all honeymoon and all that sort of stuff. I literally said to him, I said, mate, if you guys were to ever break up, you know, being as young as you are, I mean, I hope to God and hand on heart do say, you know, I hope they're together forever. But, you know, if that something was to happen, I said, I don't want you in for 3 to 5 business days. Like, I don't want you in here. I want you to sit there. I want you to help yourself and do that sort of stuff, because you coming back to work and being good is more important to me, and you're, you know, recovering, quote unquote recovering, is more important to me than you coming to work as a sad sacker, you know what, and not performing at anything. I said, you can have that time off work. Doesn't mean you're not going to talk to me. I'll call you 3 times a day. I don't care. I'll call you in the morning, I'll call you at lunchtime, I'll call you in the afternoon on my way home. And that to me is more important than making that, you know, making those exuberant amounts of money and all that sort of stuff. Because if you can create an army of guys that know that if they're in a situation where they separate from their, partner, or one of their family members was like pass away, or something huge was happening in their life, and they know that their boss is going to call them 3 times a day when they're not at work, and check in if they're all right, or send them a text message 3 times a day to check they're all right. That to me is more important than having this big successful business. But at the same time, in my head, and as I've seen in the past with businesses, I've worked a lot recently with Louis from Coolabah Landscapes. If anyone from Victoria and Melbourne know Coolabah, loveliest guy, helped me more than he could ever imagine, and anyone else could have imagined more in the last 6 months. And I think anyone in the business realm has ever helped me. But like, he takes these guys to Port Douglas every year. He has a direct line to all these guys, and he's got I think 30 something guys. And he's the big boss of the company, or it's a partnership, but one of, and and looking at that is proof that you can go and build a $10 million landscaping business and still have personal touch with 30 plus guys, and they know that they can ring you and tell you, they've separated from their girlfriend, and they want to have a chat about it, because that's the level that he's on with his guys. And that's why it's so important to me, not just because of him. Like, I was like that before we'd spoken about it, but yeah, playing to that card, men's mental health, I guess, is that there's a little bit more of attention coming onto it now. But I think I'll get controversial and say I think it's not getting to a point, but it has potentially getting to a point where it's kind of taking the piss out of a little bit. Like, we're
agree.
we're here, and it's just because we're going, like, we're working and we're doing this, and it seems like we're happy. We're fucking much better at hiding our emotions and doing that sort of stuff. Like, I don't want to get too controversial, but I think it's definitely at a point now where it is getting the piss taken out of it a little bit, and it's
it's tokenistic. It's not deep. Like, I find this with, like, there's a lot of stuff that we pretend we don't notice, but we all can see it. Like, like the token, in the movies these days, you've got to have somebody who's of a certain skin color or a certain political orientation or whatever, and they call it diversity. And I remember I saw, like, let's talk about ladies, for example. They want strong, heroic ladies in the movies. And I saw this post where somebody went back through previous movies and showed these fantastic, strong, heroic ladies in fantastic movies. But it didn't feel forced. No one, you know what I mean? Like, some of these times, and I'm not trying to get into the sexism thing or whatever, because we all want people to be successful. Like, it's not sexist to be like, come on, this feels forced. Like, we're all for whatever, right? We're all for supporting that, it's people feeling appreciated and feeling successful. But when it's forced down your throat, it doesn't seem genuine, and it's kind of, you feel that. And it's the same with some of these Are You Okay days or things like that. Like, if someone was to come to me on Are You Okay Day and be like, are you okay? I'd be like, oh yeah, man, thanks for asking. If someone comes to me, like, just on a random day, hey, how you going? Oh, it feels so much better. Like, it actually feels like you care. Like, it wasn't tokenistic. It wasn't just chucked in there because we sort of had an Are You Okay Day quota we had to knock off at a certain time. And coming back to what you're talking about with your mate, taking people out to Port Douglas and having the time for it, you do not have time for that stuff if you're running around like a headless chook chasing up invoices. You do not have time for that stuff if you're running around trying to just make ends meet. If you're on the tools for 500 hours a day and you come home and you give your wife a quick kiss and then you do a bloody podcast in the middle of the night, and no, I'm joking. Not having a chat crazy, but you get what I mean? Like, you work these in crazy hours and then you're exhausted, and then on the weekend your employee calls you and like, oh, the last thing I want to do is talk about work. But that might have been the moment that they needed to have a chat with you about something that was going on at home. And it's like we don't realize how much the money side of things in business really does affect the personal side, and the number of personal things that flow from there as well. And I just want to be a big advocate for that, because I do feel that whilst we're doing our best to change the culture and show people what they should be charging to have a successful, enjoyable business where you can actually spend time with your family and not work 500 hours a day, there's still a culture where gardeners are sort of looked down on by some, and so they find it hard to charge the right amounts. And then when you find it hard to charge the right amounts, it snowballs, and you end up being the boss that you didn't want to be, because it's so much harder to do those things practically when you're juggling business and life and 4 kids under 4 and all that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, I definitely think that the financial side it does play a pivotal role. I mean, a wise man once told me that money doesn't make you happy, but it makes life easier. And I think that, sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this podcast.
Yeah, you can swear, it doesn't matter.
You know, that's the I think that's the best analogy like I've ever heard about money is, you know, it doesn't make you happy. Like there's been summers where, you know, we've, you know, saved house deposits and done all that, and, you know, done the whole thing with money and done, you know, had it all there. But you know what? Like I was actually only speaking to somebody the other day about it, and I'm not really ashamed to say it because of, you know, the mental health thing I've just been advocating for. But like we got to a point during winter of this year, like we, you know, business has been up for 5 years, and we got to a point, you know, we didn't really want to touch our savings because we do want to buy a house by the end of next year. So we didn't want to touch any sort of savings or anything. And I ended up shopping with a calculator for the first time since I was about 20 years old when I moved out. I was shopping with a calculator because our finances were so tight, because nobody in Melbourne cares about irrigation in winter. So, you know, and that's something, you know, I'm not ashamed to talk about. Like I always put the boys' wages away. You know, as soon as we get payments in, it's, you know, it's banked up for weeks, if not months. But other than that account, that, you know, our actual, you know, personal account, like I wasn't paying myself wages at the time. Like I couldn't afford. I literally couldn't afford to pay ourselves wages this winter, which, you know, it was really debilitating for me in a mental health thing, because I'm like, oh, I can't provide for my family properly. And I literally one day got to Woolies and I'd been direct debited the kids' daycare because I thought I had about $400 my, you know, our personal account, and the daycare had taken out. I had $110 left, and I did a whole weekly shop for 4 boys under 4, including wipes and nappies, for $110 with like a calculator on my phone. But you know what? I go back to that moment and I go, that was fucking fun. Like that was like, obviously, you know, I knew what we were coming into. I knew that El Nino was getting announced. I knew that all of, like, it was all going to churn pretty quickly. It wasn't like I was going to have to do this for the next 10 years. Like I knew that, you know, there was money coming back. But I was like, this is enjoyable. Like I know that there's an end to it. This is a bit of fun for it. But you know, at the same time, I don't think I would have felt that, and I would have felt the stress of, you know, the world around me, if, you know, I didn't know that there was a finish line to it. And going back to what you said and what you were talking about with the being able to work in with, like, you know, having that money and being able to not treat people right. We always treat people right, but have that patience with people and being able to look after people's mental health. It is so much easier when that money is there.
When you got the time. I mean, everybody who's been in business, has got these kind of stories. You know, the Instagram culture that we all put out is very sexy and attractive, and that's why, like, I try and talk about, like, you know, when I have business coach Darren on, We've had them for several episodes, and we talk about. I just like talking about the mistakes that I've made and those stories you're talking about you being in the shops, and I've got so many of those. I remember very early days. Right, there's two stories. I mean, there's so many that come to mind, but I remember once I was working at a school 3 days a week, and I was working 2 days a week in the business very early when I started the business. I wasn't even 20 yet. And I remember I bought just bananas for lunch because I had maybe $5 in my account for lunch because I needed to also buy fuel to get home. And it was like $3.14 on bananas or something like that. And it was like 6 bananas, whatever it was, like a kilo or something, whatever the price was back in the day. And it was filling. I was like, I think it's as cheap as, like, just how do you do that? But I even remember there was this one time I had just bought my wife's engagement ring, right? So we were obviously dating at the time. And I'd saved up for it. And I had bad cash flow. And I didn't have, the money hadn't come in. I was owed quite a bit of money. And I had no fuel in my car, right? And like it was on empty. And I had basically no money in my account. But I had a $30 mo on one of my first clients of the day, right? So I rejigged my day because it was cash, right? And I was like, no worries. I take the $30, $20 fuel, $10 for, my lunch or whatever I'm going to buy. And that'll get me through a day. And, back when fuel prices weren't crazy, probably $1.30 or something. Remember that? And I've been married for 8.5 years. So it was probably nine something years ago whenever fuel prices were. But that was my plan. I'm going to go get this $30 of cash, and that'll get me through a day. And you never know, I might get a $100 invoice paid as well, and I'm sorted. And anyways, so I drive to this house. Client's not home. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't even know if I've got enough fuel to get home now. Right? So I called up all my clients. I think I messaged them. But I messaged all my clients saying, I'm really sorry, I'm feeling sick today, which I wasn't. And I just drove home. And I just hoped that I got home, right? And I hoped that somebody would pay me. Eventually somebody did, so I could go back the next day. But I literally had maybe $4 in my account or something like that. And I was younger then. I didn't have a mortgage and things like that. Like I was actually still living with my mum at the time. I was probably 19. No, it would have been 20. I got married at 21. And anyway, so like just things like that, I can keep going and going and going. Like just the crazy. I remember there was one client was a $1,000 a week contract basically that I had. They paid it fortnightly, and they changed their software system, right? And the invoicing software system was changed, and then like a lady went on holiday or something like that, and they didn't pay me for like, I can't remember how many weeks it was, but it was getting close. It was sort of like inconsistent here and there. It was like $18,000 on this one client, right? And things like that, like seasons like that, just it wrecks you. And I'm sure that people listening to this could like the people listening would have hundreds or thousands of stories just like that in business. And the thing is that if we're honest, right, it actually all came back to poor confidence when quoting or inexperience when quoting and a lack of knowledge in that area and all those emotional issues, the stress
and
all
having
that kind of stuff.
and having wives that are addicted to going to Kmart doesn't help.
Okay, that's mine's not addicted to going to Kmart, but I'm actually blessed that I've married somebody who isn't materialistic. And nothing against people who are materialistic. And look, materialistic is probably too strong a word, but my wife loves a good deal. Like she went to the op shop the other day and got this dress, and she was like, "This is a brand new dress from Frankie. and blah, blah, and it's like still got the tag on it. And I got it for, I don't even know how much. It shows you how good I was listening at the time. But it was a nice dress, you know? And like she likes that. And look, to be honest, our marriage would not have worked if she wasn't like that, because there was many seasons early on where we had nothing. And, you know, actually, you know, I'm thinking about it. On my honeymoon, right? I came back from my honeymoon and I had a contract that didn't pay me, and I had an employee who was doing all my work when I was obviously on my honeymoon. And it was thousands of dollars that was supposed to be paid, $3,000 or $4,000 that was due that didn't get paid. And we paid the wages of my employee, and we got back expecting a certain amount of money, and I didn't have enough money to pay for the car parking at the airport, right? This is at the end of my honeymoon, right? And it's all cash flow. We had $5,000-$6,000 in outstanding invoices, right? And you're not chasing out invoices while you're in your honeymoon. We drove straight to my mum's house, right? We got out with an invoice. They let you out. They send you an invoice, and there's some sort of like, I think it was an extra fee we had to pay or something like that. We drove straight to my mum's house. I kid you not, because she had all of our wedding gifts, right, at my mum's house. So the first thing we do after our honeymoon, drive to my mum's house. I have a key to my mum's house. Go in, grab a couple of cards, found a card, here's $100. Sweet, we're good. You know what I mean? Like we used literally honeymoon, like wedding gift money to cover the cash flow issues we had. But you know what? If I had been charging properly, which I wasn't back then, people know the first job I ever did was $35 an hour. If we had been charging properly, wouldn't have had that issue. So it's my responsibility. I made that issue. And then people come to you and say, oh, you know, it's not about the money. If it's about the other things, it kind of at some point has to be about the money. Because like saying life is not about breathing. Well, it kind of is. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not about breathing. Like breathing is not the central point of life. But if you stop breathing, you kind of stop having life. And so it kind of, you know what I mean? Like that's what it's like. Yeah. Business and life is not about money. But if you get your money wrong, and you know, God knows I have, everything flows on from that. And that's the thing about like this podcast, which is important to me, is to help people on a deeper level. Like that's why we wanted to have you on and talk about irrigation, because I know there's some people out there who are struggling financially because their business is based upon mowing lawns and the lawns aren't growing. Maybe we can help them diversify. Yeah, that's what my passion is.
Yeah,
you're still live there at 1 a.m. now? We've crossed the 1 a.m. threshold.
Yeah, I'm good.
2 a.m. Let's do it.
You
can see his face.
I don't know if you can edit this out, but I got a message before saying, "What? Why for 3 hours?" Because I said, she goes, "What time did you finish?" I said 12 to 1, I think. She goes, "Why for 3 hours?" I said, It's a whole technical and educational episode."
Oh, we can keep that in. That's not so bad. Say, I mean, tell you this would work for me. Be like, I'll buy you a Zinger box on the way home. That would work, you know. I don't know if that's got the same.
Should we ditch the world by the time, you know?
When I had actually James on, I wonder if he's still listening now. Hi, Ashley, if you are. He was. I was like, man, your wife's gonna be so grumpy at you. He's like, are you kidding? She's gonna be so glad that I've not been bugging her all night. But
yeah, I mean that is a point. You have one question. I'm curious. I'm curious to what this other question was. You said you had 2 questions before we wrap it up, and you only asked me one, and then we went on about your tirade.
I asked you about people coming and helping you. That was one of the things I wanted to ask. And the second thing was, which we haven't talked about in too much detail, but you did start mentioning, was you wanted to do some sort of course. And I thought that was a really smart idea, because you point people to some sort of, resource,
Yeah. So I do want to, I do want to run it. And if anyone did get to 2 hours and 31 minutes and 11 seconds of this podcast, definitely, I'd definitely be interested in feedback about what people want and that sort of thing. But it's definitely something that's in the works. I'm sort of halfway through writing an ebook, at the moment. But from another podcast I did, I got quite a fair bit of feedback from a few of the guys saying, like in the factory here, putting on a classroom sort of Saturday morning, maybe night schooly kind of thing. It goes for 3 or 4 hours and just run through the fundamentals of how an irrigation system works, how to install one, and that sort of stuff. Some sort of money per head, and depending on how long it would go for, whether it's a whole day or if it is 3 or 4 hours or something like that. But yeah, definitely, an ebook is something that I want to write, like how to install a quality irrigation system yourself. Even though I'm trying to install them here myself, but it's always good to give people some free advice, or free because it's in an ebook
Good
form,
advice.
but, good advice. And yeah, I think that's definitely something that's on the horizons. And definitely expanding the business into excavation. I mean, we've had the excavator sitting. I own an excavator. It's been sitting here for 8 weeks because we've had only small domestic properties or hard access properties where we can't get an excavator into it. So starting an excavation business is something that's on my priority list as well. But yeah, definitely as for the courses, it's definitely something that's crossed my mind, and I have spoken to a few people about it. And if you are interested and you have got this far into the podcast, please let me know, and give me some feedback, or organise a time if you do run a business with a few guys and you are from Melbourne. More than happy to sort of work in with you guys and have that as a thing, even if we run it at a cheaper rate to be the sort of crash test dummies of the whole thing. But yeah, it's definitely something that's on the cards, and definitely something that will be happening by the end of this summer season, I would assume.
Fantastic, mate. You know what? I think it was a very interesting finish to the podcast that started with a joke about, are you a closeted meth addict? And you're certainly
covered
not.
Everything.
Literally
No,
everything.
far from it.
From MP risers. That's our latest key. MP rotators.
Yes.
We've talked about nipples, but not the kind that you thought.
Nipples, no. We've called
risers.
Small pipes and big pipes.
Nice ones, 25 millimeters.
So how Ben from Lawn Tips doesn't know. Ben from Lawn Tips doesn't know about pipe sizes. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
Do you know what? As long as the people who are important in his life are happy, then we're all good.
As long as it matters to the people that matter.
The internet comments says, who cares? We're getting okay, we need to end this. Thanks for listening to all the way to the end. See you guys in the next podcast.
See ya.